Our protagonist, a man of exceptional talent in swordsmanship, mastered every technique and skill with ease. There was nothing he couldn't learn, and no opponent who could escape his blade. Through relentless effort, he became unstoppable. After dropping out of high school, our boy dedicated 20 years to honing his skills with a knife, eventually becoming the finest swordsman in the country. In a bustling restaurant, the staff managed the crowd when suddenly, the chef's phone alarm catches their attention. A staff member mentions it, and the chef realizes he must have set it to vibrate. Seeing the notification, he briefly wonders if it's from the game he deleted earlier, assuming his phone is malfunctioning. At that moment, another staff member informs him that a guest has arrived. The chef instructs them to tell the guest he isn't available. However, Mr. Kim, the guest, doesn't wait. He walks into the kitchen himself, dismissing the chef's excuse as an obvious lie. Mr. Kim declares it's time to hear the answer he's come for. He believes he's given the chef enough time to consider the request, and it shouldn't be difficult for someone like our boy, who handles swords every day. Realizing he might have come off as insensitive, Mr. Kim opens a suitcase full of cash as a show of sincerity. He explains that he's offering an advance payment of $300 million if our boy can complete the task. However, the chef swiftly cuts through the meat, startling everyone. He firmly states that this is a kitchen where cleanliness is paramount, and there's no place for someone like Kim. Our boy orders Mr. Kim to leave. The guest becomes furious, exclaiming that a sword saint shouldn't be cutting fish in a place like this. In response, the chef grabs a kitchen knife, further intimidating Kim. As Kim retreats, he tells our boy that he's not giving up and will definitely return soon. After Mr. Kim and his guards depart, one of the staff members remarks that the chef was being offered $300 million. He adds that if it were him, he would have accepted the offer immediately and asks why our boy turned it down. The chef replies that all his life, he's only ever sliced fish heads with a knife. He knows nothing about being a thug. The staff member suggests that the chef could leverage his reputation as a sword master to intimidate people without actually harming anyone and still collect the money. With that, he could buy a house. Our boy replies that he would decline the offer, even if someone offered him billions. Curious about the notifications, the staff member wonders if the chef is dating someone. But our boy dismisses it, explaining it's just a stupid game, though he's too embarrassed to admit he's still playing Divine Protection. The boss calls for the cleaning guy, who leaves first, while our boy reflects on his past. He remembers how his family went bankrupt when he was young, forcing him to work tirelessly and focus his life solely on making money. His phone keeps ringing, with the frequency becoming excessive. He decides to reinstall the game, realizing that the characters have been invading the academy for years. He taps the notifications, and a prompt to touch the screen appears. Hearing the nostalgic soundtrack and seeing the female characters still as beautiful as before, he feels a wave of familiarity. To our boy's surprise, the mobile screen froze, and then suddenly, a bright light emerged from the phone. The same staff member from earlier calls out to him, saying the boss is asking for him. The staff member notices that the chef is gone and wonders why he left his phone behind. The boss calls again, and the staff member speculates that the chef might have gone to the restroom. Meanwhile, the phone screen shows the completion of the transfer. Upon seeing the game, our boy immediately recognizes it as a typical pay-to-win model with a standard auto-hunting system, just like countless mass-produced mobile games. No further explanation is needed. He originally played the game because he was captivated by the appearance of the female characters and got drawn into it. Now, he finds it ironic that after spending a fortune and playing through multiple cycles, he's neither a playable character nor an NPC. He's become a background character, whose whereabouts are completely unknown. Our boy has possessed this character, and in this new world, his name is Kongjiyama. While walking, he accidentally bumps into a woman, and they both apologize. He notices that the setting of Divine Protection M resembles Korea. The names, locations, and geography are only slightly altered, with a few minor character variations. Thanks to this, Kong adapts quickly. A whole year passes, and now he's living as a teenager, unsure whether this is real or just part of the game. For him, it's a life he can't fully enjoy, much like his previous one, until that fateful day arrives. Returning from school, his parents proudly address him as the great sword master Kong, calling him their pride. They see his acceptance letter, and embarrassed, our boy asks them to put it away. His parents, beaming with pride, say they've raised him well and can't stop feeling proud every time they look at the letter. As he starts sweating, they remind him that the entrance ceremony is tomorrow and ask if he's packed everything. Pushed by their excitement, he begins packing, realizing that his modest dream of living a normal life has been shattered once again. Everyone's joy makes it impossible for him to refuse. He had tried to avoid the ceremony several times but couldn't, leaving him already exhausted. While packing, our boy stumbles upon a family photo and wonders how the Kong he possessed managed to get accepted into such a prestigious school. He recalls how things unfolded and remembers his parents telling him that last year he manifested divine powers and took the entrance exam immediately. Shocked, he realizes that before he possessed Kong, the boy had already unlocked divine powers and passed the entrance exam for Hawk Academy. It dawns on him that his character is a genius. He begins to understand that divine powers are special abilities, similar to skills in a game, but not everyone possesses them. These powers typically manifest through genetics, and based on whether one has divine power, society is divided into 3 classes: the privileged, the commoners, and the poor. Hawk Academy, where Kong was admitted, was originally founded to preserve the power of the elite, though it was established under the guise of a hero's civilization. Today, it serves as an exclusive school for upper-class families. Recently, however, a system known as special admission was introduced for non-hero families, and the character our boy possesses was admitted as one of these special students. He also understands that heroes are essential because of the threat posed by the Demon King. Yet, despite all this, he knows this isn't reality. It's just a training ground preparing students for war. Our boy speaks aloud, saying, "Divine power," and a status window appears, still unfamiliar to him. He sees the divine power he's unlocked and notices a skill called painlessness, which has a 12-hour cooldown. He scoffs, calling it nonsense. Then, his attention shifts to the divine power granted to him upon possessing Kong, the blessing of the sword god. With such power, he assumes no one will dare challenge him. It's a divine ability he's never encountered in the game before, and the name contrasts sharply with its overly simple effect. The power allows him to slash anything he cuts, but he finds it absurd to label such an obvious trait as a divine power. What feels even more out of place is the activation condition. His sword must be exactly 30 centimeters in length and less than 5 centimeters in width. He realizes it's the precise size of a sashimi knife, leaving him completely baffled. As the absurdity of it all sinks in, our boy concludes once again that life rarely goes the way he expects. He double-checks his packing and realizes he forgot his equipment. Our boy knows that even the lowest-grade E-rank equipment costs tens of millions, while average seating costs hundreds of millions. So, A and S-rank items must be treasures in themselves. He understands that the tuition alone is exorbitant, and he doesn't want to spend more money on something he's being forced into. However, since the academy requires equipment, he has to bring something or risk making a bad impression on his first day. With that in mind, he decides to head to Daixo to purchase a weapon. His thoughts are interrupted by a memory of his first master, who insisted on using a Japanese sashimi knife worth over 100 million. Suddenly, our boy finds himself thinking about that old man again, recalling his words, "A true master never blames their equipment." The next day, dressed in his uniform and entering the academy, someone questions whether the equipment he's carrying really belongs to him. During the entrance ceremony and the equipment inspection, he pulls out the sashimi knife as his weapon. Every year, the upper-class students play pranks to assert dominance from the start, and the student inspecting him asks if our boy thinks the academy is a joke, seriously questioning his decision to use a kitchen knife for the class placement test. Our boy simply replies that it's his weapon and clarifies that he's a special admission student from a modest family. He explains that the tuition alone was already a huge burden on his parents, so he couldn't justify adding the cost of an expensive weapon on top of that. The instructor glances at the color of his name tag and understands that, for a student not from an upper-class background, the academy's fees would indeed be overwhelming. He feels it would be wrong for an institution supposedly promoting equal education to push away such a sincere student. Our boy adds one more thing. Blaming equipment is something only amateurs do. A master never blames their tools. The instructor finds it odd for a teenage boy to say something so profound, yet it feels as though he's already reached some kind of pinnacle in life. The weight of his eloquent words and his unyielding spirit convince the instructor that this boy is the real deal. He approves Kong Jiama's weapon. Grateful, our boy thanks him, while the students behind him recognize him as a special admission student. They whisper among themselves, wondering how someone like him ended up in such a prestigious academy. The instructor from earlier quickly tells them to be quiet, warning that after the evaluation, depending on their actions, he can either be their angel or their devil. Hearing this, our boy decides to step outside for a break. He finds a bench and reflects on how, even though he expected this, experiencing it firsthand is still unsettling. Kong has completed the equipment inspection and survived the entrance ceremony. Now, all that's left is the class placement exam. As he sits there, he contemplates his situation, realizing he's truly made it to this school, Awakens Academy, also known as the Hero Training School, where he will be studying for the next 3 years. He notes how different the academy looks compared to the graphics in the game. If he had to exaggerate, he'd say the academy is the size of a small town, which is impressive. Attending a school meant for the upper class feels surreal, especially since he had to drop out of high school due to family circumstances in his previous life. Soon, the class placement test is announced, and students are instructed to gather at the training hall by 1 p.m. He understands that while the entrance ceremony is over, the class placement test remains incredibly important. Since an exam is still an exam, he knows he must familiarize himself with the process. Looking at his knife, he realizes that ever since coming to this world, he hasn't had a reason to use it. He remembers his master's advice: never put the knife down, even for a single day. Even while you sleep, keep holding it. Kong feels as though he's unconsciously adopting yet another habit from his master. After 20 years of living by the knife, he wonders whether a 1-year break has dulled his skills. He removes the cover from the knife and finds it far better than he expected. Curious, he decides to test it by cutting a leaf. Suddenly, the system alerts him that the weapon has met the activation conditions, and the blessing of the sword god is activated. However, since both his physical body and the weapon are at too low a level, the system initiates suppression to synchronize with the user. Shocked, our boy can't believe that simply drawing the knife triggered the blessing to activate. As the synchronization completes, the system wishes him the blessing of the god. Before he can process this, extreme pain strikes his entire body, and he realizes that if this continues, he's going to die. Suddenly, he finds himself in a new space and, confused, questions where he is. Panicking, he throws the knife away, and instantly, the surroundings return to normal, bringing him back to reality. His body still throbs with pain, and while he understands the activation of divine power, he wonders if the chaos surrounding him is linked to the sword god's blessing. The backlash is unbearable, and although the divine power of painlessness offers some relief from mild soreness, it can't alleviate this kind of agony. Our boy realizes that using his skill in this manner is unsustainable if every activation brings such pain. At that moment, the system sends out a reminder for all students to gather at the hall immediately. He knows it's time for the test and, unwilling to leave the divine weapon lying on the ground, he reluctantly decides to pick it up, assuming the pain was only a consequence of the first activation. As soon as his fingers touch the blade, his body is racked with extreme pain once again. Meanwhile, at the training hall, all the students have gathered while parents chat about the exorbitant cost of admission. Suddenly, their attention shifts to Lord Clinge, the 7-star hero and descendant of Aaron Nibelung, as well as the direct disciple of the founding hero, Awakens. Known as the strongest human, Lord Clinge's presence commands the crowd, and everyone returns to their seats. The 7-star hero sage greets him and playfully remarks that it's been half a century since they last met. Despite the years, she hasn't begun dressing like an academy director, and turning 70 doesn't seem to have affected her much. She quips that every woman wants to remain beautiful until her last day and offers to use her blessings to make Siegfried look 10 years younger. Siegfried, however, dismisses her offer, pointing out that while she approaches 70, she still hasn't matured. adding that humans should prioritize their inner nature. With a mocking grin, she calls him an old, amused by the fact that he's just as rigid as he was 50 years ago. Siegfried, clearly irritated, does not hide his annoyance. Media, on the other hand, teasingly, she assumes his granddaughter must be quite beautiful, and they both realize the test is about to begin. Inside the training hall, our boy scans the room, noting that he is the only one with black hair. Someone mutters if he is the black-haired foreigner, as the earlier chatter echoes in Kang's mind. Suddenly, a striking girl enters the hall, capturing the attention of every student, including our boy. She is none other than Abel von Nibelung, the granddaughter of the Sword Emperor and the main heroine of the game. The sole reason our boy spent a fortune on it. The subspace was created by the ancestral hero Barol Joaquin, who established this reality alongside the Academy. It is a dimension separate from the real world, where pain and damage are real, but no consequences apply to reality since there is no interference from the outside world. Even taking down someone is overlooked. Siegfried and Media discuss the subspace battles, a school tradition, but this year, they are trying something new with a battle royale format. Participants will be split into groups of 10, and it will be a survival game with no restrictions on equipment. Siegfried notes that without restrictions, the privileged students will have an unfair advantage. Media explains that they had to compromise, as the Academy is funded mostly by the nobility, and she fought hard to introduce this new system. Inside the training hall, students admire the granddaughter of the Sword Emperor, while our boy is shocked to see that she is no longer just a 2D character. This feels completely different. He inwardly calls the students fools for trying to approach her, but admits he might have done the same if he didn't already know better. Since he has played the game before, he knows that Abel possesses the miracle blessing M, which ties her to the game's protagonist. Beautiful people always seem to have someone by their side, and he realizes that, as a special student, he doesn't belong in their league. He resolves to avoid getting involved, hoping to escape a noisy school life. He sets 3 principles for his future: to finish his studies without incident, secure a conventional job, and live a safe life. He recalls that the hero's job comes with a substantial salary, but just the act of drawing a knife left his body trembling. He's still shaking. Let the hero protect the world, he thinks, while he searches for a more comfortable job. The class assignment exam for the 783rd year at Awakens Academy begins, and a mini floating machine explains the rules. This year, as previously announced, it will be a battle royale among 10 randomly assigned cadets. First place will be assigned to the Star class, second and third places to the Dragon class, while 8th to 10th places will be assigned to the Ordinary class. Class assignments will be based entirely on these results, with no time limit. Our boy immediately recognizes the setup. It's just like the game. Knowing his goal is to remain ordinary, he decides not to waste time and aims to finish quickly. The subspace generation device activates, and the exam begins. He resolves to avoid drawing his knife unless absolutely necessary. After a while, the evaluations for Group 24 are completed and announced. Soon after, Group 47's evaluation is completed as well. While observing the results, Media mentions to Siegfried that his granddaughter, with the bloodline of Changseong and Jialgung, is sure to achieve significant results. She notes that a time of 7 minutes and 14 seconds is incredibly fast. Abel, wanting a fair assessment, used a C-rank weapon to achieve the record, placing her among the top 10 in Academy history, although she couldn't break Siegfried's own record. Siegfried acknowledges this is natural for someone of the Nibelung bloodline and prepares to leave, assuming the event is over. Media informs him that there is still one group left, but he dismisses it as unimportant. Just as he is about to leave, a sudden, strange sensation washes over everyone. Media questions whether Siegfried felt it as well, to which he responds that it is unbelievable. As they try to make sense of the situation, something suddenly falls from the sky. To their shock, they witness the sky itself break apart, and 2 students emerge from the subspace. The entire crowd is confused, but then another light shines, and a knife falls from the sky as well. Media quickly calls for medical staff to check the vitals of the cadets who have just appeared. One of the fallen students is our boy, and as he lies there, he accepts the results as inevitable, predetermined from the start. Earlier, the students in the last group began fighting each other, and our boy realizes with dread that he has been caught in a squad of death. He recognizes the infamous twins of malevolence, Mao Jun and Mao Shun, from the Iron King family. While these brothers possess immense talent and innate ability, they are also known for their brutal violence and boundless cruelty. Kong recalls that they deliberately toy with everyone for 30 minutes. Our boy is completely ignored by the twins, realizing he is so insignificant to them that he is not even worth their attention. Once the twins finish beating the other students, they ask each other how many remain. Jun states that it's all over, while Shun, surprised, notes that he took care of 4 students. Jun allows Shun to handle the last remaining girl, and Shun eagerly accepts. The girl trembles in fear as she watches them approach. Our boy feels a surge of frustration as he notices that the girl is already panicked and seemingly lacks the will to fight. Shun, seeing her fear, comments that she is just his type. Just as Shun is about to attack the frightened girl, our boy can no longer remain silent. He screams, questioning why they are going so far when it's just subspace, calling them psychopaths for their cruelty. Without fully realizing it, he steps into the chaos. The twins turn their attention to him, noticing his special student tag. They call him a lowlife, and Shun decides to deal with him personally. Jun instructs his brother to take down anyone who dares to disrespect them. Our boy, panicking, wonders what he should do. He considers using his blessing of painlessness, but knows that avoiding pain for just 30 seconds won't help against opponents who have been brutalizing their classmates for 30 minutes. Spotting a sword, Kong hesitates, aware that if he grabs it, the blessing will activate. He recalls the intense pain he felt earlier when using the blade. He had just set out principles for an ordinary, uneventful life. Yet not half a day has passed, and he is already on the verge of breaking them. The twins notice him holding the knife and taunt him, asking if he is mocking them. The terrified girl watches, worried for him, as Shun prepares to finish Kong off painlessly, finding him amusing. He charges at Kong headfirst, ready to smash him. Our boy realizes he can't afford to be picky now. He decides to use the blessing of painlessness for 30 seconds, hoping it will buy him some time. As he takes a fighting stance, the blessing of the sword god activates. His plan is to endure the pain caused by the blessing while fending off Shun. Shun scoffs, asking what a pathetic knife could possibly do. Kong knows that if he doesn't finish off his enemy quickly, he will be the one to die. He feels the absurdity of holding a sashimi knife, intended for cutting fish. He recalls his boss once saying that it's merely a cinematic trope. Such knives would never work against people, even if wielded by a god. Yet, he remembers a skill. If he strikes, it will certainly slash the enemy. As Shun closes in, Kong swiftly slashes with the knife, injuring the bully's arm in one decisive strike. The battle concludes in an instant. In his previous life, he recalls asking his boss why gangsters use sashimi knives. The boss clarifies that he should not refer to him as boss, but rather as master, and questions why our boy is curious about this. He remembers that his first master was a former thug who, as an act of atonement, cut off one of his wrists and later opened a sashimi restaurant, stating that he wanted to bring joy to others with his knife skills. Our boy recalls his master's skills being genuinely impressive and asks why gangsters in movies always wield sashimi knives, wondering if it is the same in real life. His master responds that someone with a fair amount of knife experience should not be asking such questions. Our boy explains that if someone is stabbed with a wide chef's knife, the skin will immediately contract, potentially making it difficult to withdraw. In contrast, a sashimi knife is too narrow, allowing it to stab multiple times and be easily retracted. However, there is no need for stabbing, as it is primarily used for slicing fish. He questions why he cannot do the same with people. His master, annoyed, explains that fish lie flat, and if they were standing, he wouldn't even be able to slice a piece of bread in one go. Our boy is disappointed because in manga, it always looks like a clean slice every time. He assumes his boss simply lacks the skill, but his boss, angered, insists on being called master, and makes it clear that even if the god of knives appeared, it still wouldn't work. In the present moment, our boy instantly takes down Shun, surprising everyone. The bully screams in extreme pain, telling Kong to stay away as he tries to run, begging his brother for help. He cries out in agony, demanding his older brother save him. However, our boy shows no mercy and finishes him off with a single decisive strike. Shocked by what he's seeing, Jun tries to calm himself, reminding himself that it's just a void space and his brother isn't truly dead. Even though this is true, he can't help but wonder what's wrong with Kong. It seems as though our boy has used the knife to take down someone for the first time. Jun's breathing becomes ragged as he questions whether his brother's defeat was just a coincidence. Growing more cautious, especially because of that knife, he decides his brother had been too reckless. Gripping his weapon with both hands, Jun amplifies both his defense and jumping power. He prepares to face our boy, activating all three of his blessings simultaneously. Confident in his rank blessings, privileges that commoners could only dream of, Jun believes his victory is certain, unlike his careless little brother. Meanwhile, Kong calmly counts down the 30 seconds of his blessing. As Jun leaps forward to attack, he realizes that Kong is just standing still. Determined to take him down, Jun closes in, but in an instant, our boy uses his blessing, defeating Jun before he can even land a blow. Jun falls to the floor, defeated in the subspace. Though our boy manages to win the fight, the 30 seconds of his blessing soon expire, and the overwhelming pain returns, causing him to lose consciousness. When Kong finally wakes up, he finds himself in a hospital bed. As he rises, someone nearby alerts the others, announcing that the student has regained consciousness. Our boy sees a face he hasn't encountered in person before but immediately recognizes it. The man who defeated the Demon Lord's 6th Legion commander 50 years ago. It is none other than Siegfried, one of the 2 7-star heroes and the strongest human alive. Alongside him is Media, the head sage of the academy. They ask our boy about his health. Confused, he wonders why these figures of such importance are here, but they urge him to introduce himself. Siegfried gets straight to the point, questioning Kong about his actions during the exam and the strange sensation that everyone felt earlier. Kong realizes it wasn't just his imagination, it was indeed him. Noticing Siegfried's cautious demeanor, Kong understands that being marked by such a powerful individual is never a good thing. When asked to explain himself, Kong says that although it was a pocket dimension, he believed the actions of the others went too far. However, he acknowledges that his response may have been excessive and is prepared to accept any punishment without complaint. Media, with a teasing tone, questions why Siegfried is treating a student so seriously. She informs our boy that while he was unconscious, it was Siegfried who cleared his blocked blood vessels. With a playful smile, she adds that people tend to get more stubborn with age. Siegfried becomes visibly embarrassed and asks why Media is bringing that up. Our boy then realizes that this is why his body feels as light as a feather. Media explains that while he was unconscious, they reviewed the footage of what happened in the subspace, including the moment when he threw himself to protect a beautiful female student. Playfully, she calls him the prince she's always dreamed of and starts flirting with him, while the old man, Siegfried, chides her to show some dignity. She reassures Kong that no issues will arise from his actions and mentions that the Mao twins only got into the academy by currying favor with the elders, implying they got what they deserved. Our boy feels relieved, knowing he won't have to deal with them at school anymore. Media then reveals that they both came to inform him that he is the top scorer, a revelation that surprises him. Both Siegfried and Media congratulate him, but our boy is left in confusion, realizing that on the very first day, he has already broken all of the principles he set for himself. The scene shifts to an office in the academy, where Media sighs and states that she has been the head of the academy for nearly 20 years, and this is the first time something like this has ever happened. The scene then flashes back to a few moments earlier, where our boy tells Sieg and Media that he doesn't like it. Both Sieg and Media are shocked to hear this. Media, confused, asks Kong if he understands what it means to be star class. She wonders if she heard him correctly, stating that while the elders were furious, this top cadet decision was determined directly by the space itself. Kong pauses for a moment and replies that, despite everything, he still doesn't like it, further shocking both Media and Sieg. Returning to the present, Media asks Sieg if he is upset that Kong took the top spot instead of his granddaughter, as Sieg saw the footage himself. Sieg replies that there is nothing more foolish than questioning the judgment of the subspace imbued with the will of the founding hero. and since the academy chose Kong as the top cadet, Sieg and the others simply followed that decision. Siegfried thought to himself that if Kang's skills were outstanding, he would have understood. If Kang's physical abilities were exceptional, Sieg would have accepted it. And if Kang's experience were remarkable, he would have nodded in agreement. However, the young boy's movements seemed to embody a concept, the very swordsmanship Sieg had pursued his entire life. Yet, the unsettling feeling Sieg experienced when he unlocked the boy's blocked meridians lingered. A boy who had never undergone physical training, with a soft and unconditioned body, seemed to possess something that should not have been contained within him. Sieg couldn't believe that at his age, he still had such a competitive spirit, especially towards a boy the same age as his granddaughter. The scene shifts to Kong looking at the class board. Kong had been admitted to Wolf class, and our boy thinks it was the best compromise Kong could have made. The scene then transitions to the headmaster's office, where media informs Kong that he will be going to the upper class. However, Kong requests that he be placed in Tiger class instead. The frustrated headmaster states that the top cadet cannot be sent to Tiger class. Our boy replies, "In a school that prides itself on equality, why can't Kong?" The headmaster responds, "Even so, Tiger class is off limits." Instead, media offers to keep Kang's powers a secret. In her mind, media thinks that if she sends Kong to Tiger class, the elders will make an even bigger fuss. Kong gets confused seeing media's reaction. Our boy thinks the plan was to quietly complete his studies in a lower class, rather than get caught up in the power struggles of the upper ranks. At least, this much is still within the expected range. As Kong enters the classroom, he is stunned by both the class and the students. The students glance at our boy as he enters, but when they see Kang's green name tag, they start to ignore him and return to chatting. As our boy takes his seat, Kong is surprised that he was completely ignored, meaning the headmaster managed to keep everything under wraps. Kong thinks that this might actually be a good thing. At that moment, a red-haired girl approaches Kong. She thanks him for saving her back then, leaving Kong speechless. The red-haired girl then reminds Kong about the subspace incident. Hearing this, Kong wonders why she is using formal language when they are the same age. Our boy tells the girl that there is no need to thank him, as anyone would have done the same in that situation. The red-haired girl replies, "That's not true." In his mind, our boy thinks it seemed like Kong saved her, but in reality, Kong was just trying to survive. Our boy points out that they haven't introduced themselves yet, so Kong introduces himself first. The red-haired girl then states her name is Chloe. Our boy responds by saying, "It's nice to meet you, Chloe." Kong hadn't expected them to be in the same class. Internally, our boy wonders who Chloe is, as he had played through most of the game but doesn't recognize this character. As far as our boy knows, the main story in the later stages focuses on the battle with the demon tribe, so it's unexpected to see a new character appearing at this time. Finally, our boy realizes that Chloe, like him, might just be a background character. Kong asks Chloe if she can keep what happened during the exam a secret. Chloe replies, "Of course." Just as Chloe was about to say something else to our boy, the teacher enters the classroom and instructs the students to take their seats. Our boy tells Chloe they can talk later after class, and she agrees. The teacher's name is Lee Wonbin, and he introduces himself as the instructor of Wolf class. First, Lee congratulates all the students on their admission to the academy, adding that each of them was chosen to be here, inheriting the will of the founding hero, Valor Joaquin. He encourages the students to be proud of this. Since it's the first day, Lee announces they will begin with some simple physical training. He instructs the students to change into their training clothes and gather at the training ground within 30 minutes. One of the students asks about the training course. Lee explains that it's a simple routine: 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, and 100 squats, followed by 10 laps around the training ground. Lee then asks if there are any questions, and if not, the students should change and gather at the training ground. The students shout, "Yes, sir." As they begin leaving the class, our boy, sitting alone, wonders if this training is meant to turn cadets into soldiers. Kong approaches the instructor, and Lee asks, "What is it?" Kong wonders why Instructor Lee knows his name, but our boy realizes that's not important right now. What matters is finding a way to avoid this tedious training. Our boy tells Lee that he's feeling a little unwell. Hearing this, Instructor Lee responds, For the top cadet, I don't think this training will help you feel better. How about training with the star class on your first day? He adds that the headmaster has given our boy permission to attend all classes. Kong feels frustrated hearing this, as media had promised to keep his status as the top cadet a secret. Kong quickly tells instructor Lee that it's not about being sick, he just needs to use the restroom urgently. Our boy, feeling a little sore, reflects on how the instructor has scheduled the training perfectly. Hearing this, instructor Lee says, as expected from the top cadet, and tells Kong he will see him at the training ground. Kong replies, yes. The scene then shifts to the training ground, where our boy feels exhausted from all the running. All the other students are ahead of Kong, leaving him behind, running at his best pace. As Kong continues doing his best, Chloe approaches him and asks if the training is difficult for him, noticing that he looks unwell. Our boy replies, no, it's okay. Chloe then asks what lap Kong is on. He replies that he's on his 5th lap. Curious, our boy asks Chloe about her lap count, as it seemed like she was far behind. Chloe tells Kong that she's on her 9th lap, leaving him stunned. Chloe happily begins to cheer for Kong, encouraging our boy to do his best as she quickly dashes to the front. Kong can't believe what he just witnessed. The scene shifts to Kang's room, where our boy is lying on his bed, having only been drinking water. Frustrated, Kong states that he's hungry. It has now been 1 week since our boy joined the academy, and he has encountered an unexpected problem. The scene moves to the cafeteria, where Kong is ordering his food, but our boy is shocked to see a meal ticket box in front of him, realizing that the food is not free. Kong decides to buy a ticket for his meal, but is further shocked to see the prices. The meal he wants costs 50,000 won. Kong is stunned by how expensive the academy's cafeteria is. Back in his room, our boy finishes the last bottle of water. In frustration, Kong throws the empty bottle at the wall, angry and hungry, unable to believe how high the prices are in the academy's cafeteria. Nearly out of the living expenses his parents gave him, Kong thinks to himself that he's really an idiot for not taking advantage of the situation when he had the chance. For days now, our boy has been surviving on the cheapest water from the campus store. A status window appears in front of Kong, stating that our boy's physical stats have increased to 12, and that the blessing is activated only for swords of specific lengths and widths. Just thinking about it makes the blessing window pop up again for Kong. Our boy stands up and looks at himself in the mirror, stating that it wasn't a waste of time, as Kong has gained a lot of muscle. Our boy wonders if the blessing of the sword god cleared Kang's blood vessels. At this rate, Kong thinks it's almost like an evolution. However, the blessing of the sword god still hasn't fully expanded. If Kong continues improving step by step, our boy might be able to handle short swords soon. Looking at the Sashimi sword, our boy recalls being terrified of even holding a sword during the entrance ceremony. But now, if Kong isn't holding one, his hands itch. Perhaps it's the influence of the blessing. Our boy wonders why he feels so proud. Suddenly, Kong hears a knock on his door. He asks, "Who is it?" And upon opening the door, is surprised to see Chloe. He wonders why she is here. Chloe, shyly, asks if she has perhaps disturbed Kang's rest. Our boy replies that he was just lying down and asks Chloe what's the matter. Chloe shyly tells Kong that she hasn't seen him in the campus cafeteria all week, so she was worried that our boy might not be feeling well. Our boy explains that he usually doesn't eat food made by others, though in his mind, Kong admits that he absolutely loves food made by others. Kong reassures Chloe not to worry. Chloe then suggests that if Kong is okay with it, she was thinking of buying some ingredients from the campus store so they could cook dinner together. Without hesitation, Kong tells Chloe, "Let's go," surprising her. Our boy quickly adds that he's good at cooking and will handle it. Chloe calls after Kong, but he doesn't stop, stating that her dorm is across the street, right? Chloe agrees and says, "Let's go together." The scene then shifts to Chloe's dorm, where she absolutely loves Kang's cooking. Our boy is glad that Chloe enjoys his food. Chloe is impressed, noting that she only boiled fish and never expected to taste cooking like this. Kong then says he'll check the fridge to see if he can make something else as well. As our boy opens the fridge, he finds it filled with fish. Kong comments that Chloe must really like fish. She replies that she does, as she is from a seaside area. Kong responds that's great because our boy specializes in fish dishes. He thinks to himself that this is fortunate, as he really wanted to cook anyway. However, the only problem is the blessing of the sword god. Kong then asks Chloe if she has a longer knife. Chloe asks if he means a long sword. Our boy replies affirmatively, but Chloe knows that his weapon is the sashimi sword, which makes it feel a bit awkward to use a knife like that. Chloe quickly goes to retrieve a white sword and asks Kong if it's suitable. Shocked and confused, Kong tells Chloe that it's fine and that he will just use the kitchen knife instead. Kong thinks that it can't be helped. As he touches the kitchen knife, the blessing of the sword god activates, and our boy intends to finish the dish in under 30 seconds, which is the limit for the blessing of painlessness. Remarkably, in just 21 seconds, our boy completes the dish. Chloe is impressed by Kang's skills, while our boy thinks to himself that it felt like a masterpiece. Chloe asks our boy how he cooks so well. Kong replies that he used to work part-time at a Japanese restaurant. This is the first time Chloe has heard about a part-time job. Noticing her expression, our boy asks if she doesn't know about part-time work. Chloe apologizes to Kong, but he assures her that there is no need to apologize. In his mind, our boy reflects on the disparity in their backgrounds. Nevertheless, Kong states that he is glad Chloe enjoyed the meal. Chloe then tells our boy that since he prepared the meal, she will handle the dishes. Kong thanks her and says he will leave the dishes to her. He then goes to look at the moon, feeling full and satisfied. However, Kong notices that Chloe has gotten water all over her uniform. Observing her, our boy wonders if Chloe has ever washed dishes before. At that moment, Kong notices a diary on Chloe's desk. Inside, he sees that it's written that someone helped her during the class placement test today, and she feels she must repay him. Kong finds Chloe's handwriting and the stickers she used to be cute, but as the wind blows, the diary pages turn to another entry. Inside the diary, it is written that the person who saved Chloe turns out to be in her class as well, but she can't bring herself to talk to him. Reading this, our boy finds Chloe to be really cute, and now he understands the reason why she couldn't approach him. Curious, Kong goes to read more, but as he turns to the next page, he is shocked to see, "I love him," written on every page. At that moment, Chloe sees Kong with her diary, and a plate drops from her hand, causing our boy to turn around and notice her. With a serious tone, Chloe asks Kong if he saw what was written in the diary. Heroic families gain honor by defeating monsters, receiving the admiration of society, and solidifying their positions. However, within these stagnant institutions, there are always vested interests that exploit the weak under the guise of authority. When even public authorities are powerless to condemn them, one heroic family steps forward to take on the role of shadows. The name of that family is Auditora de Sicilia, a family that operates in the shadows while aiming for the light, combining order maintenance with assassination. Those born into the Auditora family undergo mental conditioning before puberty, suppressing their emotions and enduring harsh training to become assassins. The age at which Chloe first saw blood was 15. We then see an old man telling Chloe not to deny her talents as an assassin, something she had heard even before reaching adulthood. Chloe accepted this. The constant training distorted her mentality, casting a dark shadow deep within her heart. By the time her sense of self was worn away, only traces of emotion remained. Chloe reached the age to enroll in the academy, specifically the Awakens Academy, where classes are assigned based on individual skill. Although each member of the Auditora family, aiming for the shadows, clearly possessed abilities above the dragon class, they were assigned to the common class due to family tradition and the agreement between the family and the academy. We see the old man telling Chloe to stay out of sight. However, even the 3 years of Chloe's youth were stripped away by the family, taking away all personal freedom as she faced the fate of becoming an assassin. Chloe did not utter a word. She merely accepted her circumstances, thinking that nothing would change either way. She thought so until she met a certain male student during the subspace battle royale. Even though death within the space isn't real, it would be Chloe's first time experiencing death. She didn't cower in fear. Rather, she faced death calmly, confronting her predetermined fate. She had long since ceased her futile struggles. That was how Chloe learned to live, and that was how she had always lived, believing that nothing would change either way, or so it had been. but it felt as though the sun had broken through the dark clouds in the midst of a storm of frost. Chloe felt something, a sword wielded by one's own will, a sword wielded to protect someone. Chloe was the reason why that male student wielded his knife. During her childhood, she remembered the fairy tale she had secretly hidden by her bedside. It was about a princess trapped in a castle and a prince's love, a story that revolved around a prince appearing and saving people. Chloe's face turned red as an unknown, hazy feeling arose within her. She had only one thought, that this was love. We return to the present, where Kong is completely shocked to see Chloe surrounded by her aura. Kong wonders what went wrong. He thinks to himself about when he first glimpsed Chloe's innocence, or was it when he foolishly followed along just for a meal? He then tries to change the topic by asking Chloe if the moon isn't beautiful. Chloe doesn't say anything. Kong thanks Chloe for the delicious dinner and states that he will leave for today, promising to see her tomorrow. Then Chloe asked our boy if he had seen what was written in the diary. Hearing Chloe's tone, our boy was surprised. In his mind, Kong wondered if Chloe had eyes in the back of her head. How had she seen him? On top of that, the informal language that Kong insisted Chloe should change made her seem like a completely different person at that moment. Our boy told Chloe that he hadn't seen anything. Chloe insisted that he was lying, prompting Kong to admit that, yes, he had seen it. Chloe fell silent again and then began to take out her sword, which shocked our boy. He didn't understand what was happening. Looking out the window, he realized they were on the 4th floor, and if he jumped from there, he would get injured. Moreover, there was only one exit. Frustrated, our boy thought that he was trapped here. Then Kong sensed something and noticed that Chloe looked like a completely different person. Her sword was filled with aura as well. Our boy thought that Chloe was really coming at him. He wondered if she was unconscious. He seemed to have a rough idea about such things, noting her motionless pupils and dull red eyes that felt lifeless. Now our boy is sure that Chloe is a Yandere. Furthermore, the fierce, energetic attitude that can change in an instant leads Kong to believe that Chloe might have a split personality. With her Yandere characteristics already overwhelming, the possibility of a split personality adds to his concern. Our boy thinks that opening the diary might have triggered this personality change. He considers this dangerous, as Chloe will probably chase him until he dies. Kong needs to establish a foothold here to ensure his safety. However, he is stunned to realize that Chloe's killing intent is currently stronger than that of the Mao brothers. He cannot help but remark that academy life is truly tough. As our boy calms down, he thinks that he first needs to get out of this situation. He begins to contemplate his options and remembers that he has 9 seconds left on his painlessness skill and that his sashimi knife is in his room. He recalls the knife he used earlier, but it is too far away. Our boy notices that Chloe is getting ready to strike. Kong looks around and sees a box cutter. However, Chloe charges at him with full force. With no choice, our boy grabs the box cutter, activating the blessing of the sword god. As Chloe approaches, our boy notes that her hair seems a little longer, and he expresses his intention to trim it just a bit. Then we see Chloe waking up in her bed. As she awakens, she wonders where Kong has gone, recalling that he was looking out the window while she was doing the dishes. She remembers sneaking a glance at him and then realizes that her katana is missing. Fortunately, she spots her katana beside her bed and feels a sense of relief upon seeing it. Chloe notes that she often loses consciousness when handling a katana. She then recalls the old man praising her, but she has no clear memory of what transpired. The old man reassures her, telling her not to worry about it and that she should embrace her talents as an assassin. Chloe begins to feel embarrassed, her face flushing red as she wonders if she did something strange while unconscious. Spotting the box cutter on the floor, she questions what it is doing there. Upon further reflection, Chloe notices that her hair appears to be shorter and considers that the box cutter may have been used to cut it. Finally, she sees that Kong has tidied up, and when she notices her cut hair in the basket, she is filled with happiness, exclaiming that Kong is truly kind. Chloe thinks that she should write this in her diary before she forgets. The scene shifts outside, where our boy, completely exhausted, reflects on how he managed to get through that situation somehow. He sits on a bench, pondering the deal with Chloe. Generally, the The purpose of swordsmanship is to take down an opponent with a single strike. However, the sword Chloe wields relentlessly targets only vital points, almost as if it is specialized for ambushes, posing a significant threat to his life. In a moment of panic, Kong quickly swings his hand. Fortunately, because the knife is short, he only manages to cut her hair. Our boy quickly cleans up, ensuring there shouldn't be any further remarks. Everything seems fine to Kong as he contemplates that achieving stability, safety, and security is not easy. He has heard people say that being ordinary is the hardest path, but this situation is far beyond that. In fact, when our boy was thrown into this game, he had no ambitions. For someone like him, who has reigned at the pinnacle with a single sashimi knife, abandoning romance was not an easy choice. However, everyone has their assigned role. The blessing of miracles is the name of the game, and the unique blessing of the protagonist of this sword, whom Kong has yet to encounter, is accompanied by the blessing of valor, Awakens. Our boy remembers that there are only 2 legendary blessings in the game. The contents of the blessings are intuitive. Please save the world from the Demon King. And the protagonist is chosen by both the Holy Sword and the Demon Sword, Bamong. In contrast, our boy can only use sashimi knives. Moreover, since entering the academy, the continuous encounters with these unrealistic figures and situations have made our boy forget his goal. Kong thinks that he has stopped for various reasons. Come to think of it, is there not even a single ordinary person in this world? Our boy has a vague understanding of the important characters in the game, but his comprehension of this world itself is still quite lacking. It has been just over a week since our boy entered the academy, and according to the story, it is about time the main character's blessing has activated, as they are just now completing the enrollment process. This means the story of the game is finally about to truly start. Kong seems to know the general plot, but our boy hasn't seen the ending. Of course, knowing the official story up to the midpoint is definitely an advantage. Whatever happens, Kong decides to follow the official route. If everything gets mixed up, it will only lead to wasting whatever merits remain. If Kang's memory serves him right, the story darkens significantly from the second semester of the 3rd year, sensing the birth of a hero and the demon race, which will unify their forces under demon lords and threaten the academy. The conflict between demons and humanity will eventually escalate into a world war, thus following a typical cliché fantasy plot. Our boy, who sought the charm of a youthful life he never experienced in his teenage years, cannot believe that all the characters died, prompting Kong to delete the game with that thought in mind. What's even more chilling is that this terrible war occurs in this world, and our boy wonders if he will die in the war too. However, our boy realizes that there are still nearly 3 years left. So now our boy needs a realistic goal more than ever. Kong decides to get stronger and survive. He further reflects that most mass-produced game narratives tend to have a happy ending. This world will likely be saved by the protagonist as well. However, our boy needs power to protect himself. He cannot live with the fate of potentially dying at any moment due to the war. Therefore, Kong should train himself to survive without drawing too much attention. If Kong stands out, there is a chance our boy will have to fight the demon army, which is something our boy intends to avoid. Additionally, Kong needs to be cautious with using the blessing of painlessness, as our boy picked up the sashimi knife out of necessity, but the burden on Kang's body is too great. Then a status window opens up, and Kong sees that his performance is definitely impressive, but it appears there is a lot of new information. Physical rank, mental rank, weapon rank. The numbers there seem to represent levels of ranks, and this detailed information is something our boy cannot understand as Kong clicks on it. A notification appeared, stating that access is denied due to unmet conditions. Our boy thinks that this is not important right now, adding yet another question to the list of mysteries surrounding his abilities. However, the most pressing concern at the moment is physical training, and our boy needs a new weapon as well. Kong cannot rely solely on the blessing of painlessness for 30 seconds indefinitely. He also needs to train with swords that do not meet the conditions for the sword god's blessing. Fortunately, next month, there will be a practical combat training session replacing the midterm exams, and the reward for this training is the Murasame, a B-class weapon. If our boy can handle the Murasame skillfully, it will be sufficient for graduation. Its specifications do not meet the activation conditions for the sword god's blessing, so it won't impose a burden as a primary weapon. Kong realizes that there is more to do than he initially thought. At that moment, Abel approaches from behind and tells Kong that it is her spot. Our boy is shocked to see her. Frustrated, Abel insists that Kong move a bit. As our boy shifts aside, he can't help but think that Abel looks unreal, no matter how he sees her. Our boy ends up staring at Abel without realizing it. Abel tells Kong that there is no need for him to leave. He just needs to move a little bit. As Abel sits down, our boy thinks that it's her spot, but aren't the benches public property? Kong considers that this might be due to the class system. He thinks that if he gets involved with the heroine, the main story will definitely become complicated, and Kong decides to avoid it, even if it becomes uncomfortable. On the other hand, Kong finds Abel to be truly beautiful. Abel informs Kong that this is where the stars are most visible, which startles our boy. Kong looks at Abel, smiling, and wonders if this is really Abel, the granddaughter of the sword saint he knows. The protagonist was also a difficult character to approach at the beginning. Then Abel asks our boy if his weapon is also a sword. Kong asks Abel how she knows that. Abel replies that her grandfather told her, and she also heard that swordmasters have a different look in their eyes. Kong seems flustered and confused. Then Abel asks our boy if he wants to try holding her sword. Kong remarks that the sword doesn't feel heavy at all. However, he is surprised to see Abel sulking. Kong thinks that Abel is difficult to get used to and wonders if this is really the Abel he knows. Then Abel asks our boy if he doesn't recognize her. Upon hearing this, our boy wonders why Abel isn't questioning Han, as if she suspects him. Kong thinks, of course, Abel isn't questioning him, since there isn't a single person in this school who doesn't know who Abel is. He conveys this to Abel, who then responds by saying she doesn't know him. In his mind, our boy questions what Abel's point is. Abel continues, remarking that it's rather cliché for Kong to know her name while she doesn't know his. Our boy asks if he really needs to introduce himself to someone he just met. Abel replies that one can never be too sure. He could be a spy for the Demon King, infiltrating the academy as a student, for all she knows. Abel also suggests there's no good reason for Kong to be out alone this late at night. Both of them exchange serious looks, and Kong thinks there's no rhyme or reason to the situation. Then, our boy asks Abel why she's out here. Abel responds, "Isn't it obvious? I'm here to exercise and train." Kong tells her that he's been exercising too. Abel asks him what kind of exercise, and with a straight face, our boy replies, "Breathing." Abel finds Kang's answer absurd, but as our boy looks at her hands, he notices that Abel has indeed been training. Seeing Kong, Abel quickly hides her hand. Our boy then tells her that she is very diligent. Abel responds, "Of course I am. People don't understand what it means to be part of the nibbling family. One must be perfect at all times. If even a sliver of weakness is shown, others will seize upon it." Abel states that his camp knows that Abel isn't the top student this year. To be honest, this is the first time Abel has ever lost to someone. Our boy remains silent. Abel then asks Kong if he knew, smiling as she states that on one hand, she felt relieved, but she was still curious about the person who defeated her. She wanted to find out who they were so she could crush them next time. Our boy is stunned to hear this. Kong asks if she really has to go that far. Abel replies, "It's a matter of pride." She goes on to explain that she kept asking her grandfather for details, but he told her that the top student wasn't even in her class. To make matters worse, the top student had the nerve to skip the oath ceremony. Abel adds, "How could I live with being second place after that?" After calming down, Abel reflects, "I'm sharing all of this with someone I don't even know." Kong then asks Abel why she is telling him all this. Abel replies, "Because you're weak." She further explains that the motto of her family is, "Be firm with the strong and merciful to the weak." Abel adds that all her classmates are exceptional at what they do, so she doesn't have any friends. Hearing this, Kong thinks this must be why the main character is so distant. Abel then tells our boy that she's going to turn in for the night. Hearing this, Kong says his goodbye. Abel sits quietly for a moment before asking, "Are you really not going to tell me your name?" Our boy responds that he doesn't want to. The scene shifts to Kang's classroom, where our boy sits alone, reflecting on how his life at the academy is much calmer than he had anticipated. Chloe quickly befriended others and blended into the class, while our boy was busy avoiding eye contact and trying not to run into her. In the instances where Kong did meet Chloe's gaze, her new friends would stare at him with icy looks. But our boy couldn't care less about their dismissive stares, as he was a special admissions student. He wasn't the only unique one in the Tiger class, though there weren't many like him. Despite being in the same class, they were reluctant to interact with each other. Kong guessed it stemmed from a sense of entitlement. Thinking about it, our boy noted that it was actually a good thing not to be in the upper class, especially since this was the season when the Star and Dragon classes formed political factions. Even back when Kong played this game, they always felt like clowns. Just the thought of being in that class now made our boy dizzy. Kong is content, though, as at least he's eating well. He wonders what he should eat today. We see that media gave Kong a card for daily use, a perk for being the top student. Media also apologized to Kong for the delay in receiving the card, explaining that it's actually a faculty member's card. Bowing 3 times a day to the academy director wouldn't be enough to express how thankful our boy is. Now, Kong reflects that he has been fulfilling his duties as a student faithfully, without significantly impacting the main scenario. Our boy resolves to spend the next 3 years like this. If Kong can manage that, he believes he can achieve the future he's imagined. The scene then shifts to the next classroom, where the teacher begins explaining to the students about events that took place 700 years ago. After the first Human-Demon War, the hero Joaquin Baylor, recognizing the need to cultivate the next generation of heroes, established this academy with his 7 disciples. The teacher reminds the students that this information will be on their upcoming exam and urges them to familiarize themselves with it. Meanwhile, Kong, bored in class, reflects that our boy already knows most of it. As the founding hero, Joaquin Baylor fought for 20 years against the commander of the First Corps and the Demon King's right-hand man, Lekin, and emerged victorious. However, Joaquin injured his arm and could no longer participate in battle. The war had no clear victor, but fortunately, the humans and demons reached a truce during the conflict. Joaquin then established the academy to nurture future generations. The teacher continues, explaining that the first Human-Demon War led to the signing of the non-aggression treaty between the 2 parties, ushering in an era of peace that has lasted for the past 700 years. Hearing this, the students begin to chat about whether there will be a war in their generation. Meanwhile, Kong thinks to himself that our boy is the only one aware that the beginning of the first crack suggests that peace is not far off. It's unnatural for everyone to be so accustomed to this serenity. As much as our boy would like to tell media what's happening, he is uncertain of the consequences that such a revelation might bring. Although media does not hide her desire to leave her position as dean as soon as possible, she was the first person in the story to sense the abnormality. Media was also the first of the 7 heroes to step up to protect the students. While our boy didn't play much of the game, Kong did look it up and discovered that Media was the first hero to be taken down by the Demon King. He thinks that if only he didn't know that. Then the teacher informs the students that's all for today and reminds them to study hard for the exam in 2 weeks. As class ends, the students rush outside together. Seeing them, our boy wonders what is happening. He then realizes it must be him, as today is the 5th of May. Kong goes outside as well, thinking that if his memory serves him correctly, today marks the enrollment of the world's main character, named Leon van Reinhardt, and the 700 years of peace will soon experience its first crack. Our boy finds Leon annoying, particularly because the women who will fall for him include Rachel Demora, niece of the Spear Saint, Saki Ryojo, daughter of the Bow Saint, and Abel von Nibelung, granddaughter of the Sword Emperor. Our boy thinks that even the members of the protagonist party are impressive. The protagonist of Blessing of Miracles, Leon van Reinhardt, will be one of the first drafted in 3 years. In reality, drafted is a nice way of putting it, as it is no different from forced conscription, and Kong refuses to go through that a second time. By the way, even Valor Hoakin was only able to seal the first Legion commander, which makes Kong wonder just how powerful the Demon King truly is. Our boy knows that this isn't some insane story where the protagonist loses. Just then, Leon looks at Kong and smiles, which surprises him. Kong reflects that Leon has the Blessing of Miracles, suggesting that the protagonist of the story will be able to handle things on his own. Our boy notices that Leon has a pretty trustworthy face and finds himself convinced without realizing it. The scene then shifts to the training hall, where Kong is practicing with a wooden sword. After a few swings, our boy realizes that deviating from the standard means the blessing doesn't manifest. He needs to possess a certain level of skill and swordsmanship. Just then, Chloe approaches our boy and asks if she made some kind of mistake. Surprised, Kong wonders when she arrived. He tells Chloe that nothing happened, to which she asks, "Really?" Our boy reassures her, as he intends to keep things peaceful and doesn't want to make unnecessary enemies. Chloe expresses her relief, saying that's a good thing. In his mind, our boy contemplates Chloe's true identity. She had been able to handle a sword even while unconscious, a sword filled with sorrow. The blade seemed to plead for help for some reason, yet it was still imbued with killing intent, making Chloe more dangerous than the Mao brothers. Chloe then asks Kong if it's okay with him for her to invite him to dinner that night, as she really wants to repay him. Of course, Chloe isn't as skilled in cooking as Kong. As he thinks about dinner, our boy recalls what happened last time. However, seeing the look on Chloe's face, he hesitates. Kong thinks it feels awkward to refuse, but if he accepts, he might find himself in trouble. Then he comes up with an idea and asks Chloe if it's a bit awkward to say, but instead of dinner, could he ask her for a favor? He explains that he couldn't think of anyone else but Chloe to rely on. Hearing this, Chloe becomes happy and asks what the favor is. Our boy states that he would like Chloe to teach him swordsmanship. Then the scene shifts to a few moments later, where our boy, while holding the wooden sword, he thinks that he needs a swordsmanship teacher anyway, and Chloe is frighteningly strong. Kong wonders if this is a good excuse, considering that since that day, the one thing he makes sure to watch before going to bed is how to survive a Yandra, which has proven helpful. Chloe, radiating her bright energy, approaches our boy and asks when he arrived, mentioning that she was waiting for him over there. Kong replies that he just got here, and then asks Chloe what about her. She responds that she also just arrived. Our boy inquires about the time, and Chloe tells him it was around 6:30. He reminds her that they agreed to meet at 8, and Chloe can't help but smile. Kong keeps staring at Chloe and looking at her outfit. Seeing this, Chloe asks our boy if something is wrong. He replies that it's nothing. In his mind, Kong reflects that he hadn't noticed when Chloe was in her uniform, but now he can see her defined abs and muscles. He understands why Chloe is so strong and finds her cute as well. Kong hands Chloe the wooden sword, and as she takes it, she remarks that she thought they would be using real swords. Surprised by this, our boy wonders if he heard her correctly. Who trains with real swords? This is not a battle. He tells Chloe that it's training, so they should use wooden swords to avoid injuries. Chloe states that Kong is really kind. As Chloe swings the wooden sword, Kong is stunned to see her aura power manifesting even through the wooden weapon. He wonders just how strong Chloe's aura is. As Kong grabs his wooden sword, he decides to be careful. Suddenly, a status window opens up, and our boy confirms whether he can use the wooden sword without activating the blessing. He sees that the sword's specifications are fine and that his physical growth is steady, but he wonders if the blessing is usually like this. While it's common for a blessing to upgrade with skill level, Kong wonders if it usually comes with additional effects, as he doesn't recall it being like this. He considers how much growth is needed to see this. Observing our boy standing there, Chloe asks if something is wrong. Kong apologizes to her, stating that it's nothing. In his mind, he thinks that this status window seems to be visible only to him, which means he must look like a spaced-out idiot to Chloe. Seeing Chloe's excitement, our boy reminds her that today is his first time doing swordsmanship, so she should go easy on him. Chloe replies, "Of course." Our boy gets ready and states that they should begin. As they face each other, he reflects on his practical approach in his past life. As the saying goes, seeing is believing. To become a master in any field, it's not enough to merely work hard. Kang's quick adaptation to the academy is also a product of the learning he has absorbed since he was young. Chloe gets ready to strike as she begins to gather her aura. Kong thinks to himself that his hands are sweaty and his posture is awkward. Because the essence of swordsmanship is to precisely strike the opponent, Chloe charges straight at our boy with full speed. Surprised by her speed, our boy barely manages to avoid her strike. Stunned, he thinks that he told Chloe to take it easy, but she seems to be in a league of her own. She strikes at him again, and Kong blocks it with his sword, finding her strike incredibly heavy. After barely managing to block her attack once more, our boy decides to counterattack. To his surprise, Chloe jumps into the air and prepares to strike at him again. Trying to focus, Kong notices that Chloe is moving even faster than before. As she strikes, Kong braces himself and takes the hit head-on with his sword, but Chloe's attacks don't stop there. She continues to strike at him from different angles again and again. Our boy finds himself being pushed back, realizing that her strikes are extraordinarily heavy. If he takes many more hits like this, he might be seriously injured. As Kong reaches his limits, he struggles to find an opportunity to counterattack. But then, suddenly, Kang's wooden sword broke in half. Seeing this, Chloe apologizes to him, explaining that she meant to go easy but ended up breaking the wooden sword. However, at that moment, it becomes clear that our boy's broken wooden sword has now met the conditions for the blessing of the sword god, and the blessing is activated. Our boy loses control and finds himself surrounded by a blue aura. Surprised, Chloe backs off, unable to understand what is happening. She asks Kong if he is all right, but he doesn't listen and charges at her with full force. Stunned, Chloe barely manages to block the strike, but our boy is now more powerful than before and pushes her back, causing her to crash into the wall. Stunned, Chloe thinks that Kong seems like a completely different person from just moments ago. Our boy, on the other hand, wastes no time and strikes at Chloe again, but she dodges the attack. He has completely lost control and is now under the influence of the blessing of the sword god. Seemingly injured, Chloe reflects that Kang's previous attack caught her off guard, making it hard for her to move now. She wonders what on earth has happened to him. Although Chloe doesn't understand what is going on, she realizes she needs to stop the match for now. She tells our boy to stop, but he charges at her with incredible speed. Seeing Kong approach, Chloe thinks that she can't avoid this strike. She tells our boy to get a hold of himself, but just as he is about to strike at Chloe, she shouts his name. The scene shifts to Kong, who seems to be somewhere in the kitchen, where he hears Chloe's voice calling for him. We then return to the training ground, where Kong has thrown his sword into the wall, missing Chloe. Chloe tells our boy that it's her, and he smiles at her, apologizing and stating that they should stop for today. Seeing that Kong is back to normal, Chloe asks if he is all right. Our boy thanks Chloe for helping him with his practice and mentions that he will head in first. As our boy leaves the training ground, the scene shifts to later that night, where Chloe is walking to her dorm. She reflects that ever since the class assignment test, Kang's skills are not just raw strength but carry an eerie feeling. It's not only his skill but also his raw instinct. Even though the blessing manifested unconsciously, Chloe realizes she is still no match for Kong, especially with a half-training sword. She knew he was strong but never expected him to be this powerful. At that moment, someone with a mask covering his face tells Chloe that she seems to be enjoying herself. Chloe's expression turns serious upon seeing the masked man. The masked man's name is Nox Auditor, a second-year student. Chloe addresses Nox as brother and asks him what he is doing here. Nox responds by questioning if this is all Chloe is doing after entering the academy, making friends with commoners. Chloe insists that Nox should not refer to Kong in that manner. Hearing this, Nox acknowledges that the guy's name is Kong and warns Chloe that if she continues to associate with him, the Auditor family will eliminate him. Chloe walks past Nox, telling him that even if the entire Auditor family comes, they will not be able to handle Kong. Nox, taken aback, wonders who this Kong is. The scene then shifts to our boy, who reflects that he needs to clarify something. The power he has been granted is not a divine blessing or favor. Rather, it seems more like a curse. To avoid relying on the blessing of the sword god, our boy sets out to find new equipment, but that power seems to mock his efforts, following him and taking control of his body. While Kong feels no pain, he also experiences a debilitating sensation that seems to go on endlessly. That curse manipulates our boy like a marionette bound by threads. Kong surrendered completely to the voice that whispered sweet words to him. Cut more, destroy more. Chloe's scream, filled with desperation, called out the name that our boy had come to recognize as his own, Kong Jiama. In that cry, the fragments of the worlds were brought together. Our boy threw away the training sword that had clung to him like his own skin, realizing that if he did not detach it now, he would lose himself forever. Until recently, Chloe was merely a Yandra who wanted to kill Kong. But now she had become the girl who revived his fading consciousness. Although Chloe was the one who originally broke the sword and caused this issue, our boy felt a mix of irritation and gratitude. Therefore, he decided to let it go without dwelling on it further. Even so, Kong left in a hurry to avoid the possibility of the sword god's blessing manifesting again. But could he truly evade this problem for the rest of his life? The sword god's blessing was a talent that felt close to a curse, manifested by trading one's lifespan. It was a burden that Kong had to bear. As an outsider cast into this world, our boy didn't wish for much. He simply wanted to live a normal life. He believed he could handle a few incidents as they arose, but only now did he realize there was something within his body, something trying to consume his reason. This was not a blessing. Rather, it was a curse solely intended to devour Kong. The art of the reverse heavens. The scene shifts to 3 days later in the classroom, where all the students have gathered. We see Chloe chatting with her friend, but ever since the day she trained with Kong, our boy hasn't been seen. It has now been 3 days. Chloe realizes that she doesn't even have Kang's contact information and wonders why she didn't ask for it earlier. She had gone to his dorm room and even knocked on the door, but all she could hear were groans of pain. Chloe wanted to break in but was afraid Kong would resent her for it, so she turned away. Chloe reflects on how she enjoys watching Kong when he's deep in thought, resting his chin on his hand during class. She's lost count of how many times she's glanced at him every morning. Afraid that Kong might think she's weird, Chloe is always careful when she talks to him. Initially, she thought she had fallen for Kong because he saved her life, but maybe that was just an excuse. She truly misses him. The scene then shifts to the next day in the classroom, where Teacher Lee instructs everyone to keep quiet. Since the weather forecast predicted rain today, the training has been replaced with self-study. However, in his mind, Instructor Lee thinks once again that Kong Jiama hasn't shown up. Lee assumes Kong must have his reasons, and he trusts our boy, believing that trusting and waiting is the true duty of an educator. Lee then instructs the students to begin their self-study. At that moment, a student enters the class late, and Lee goes to see who it is. He is shocked to see that it's our boy, Kong. As Kong walks down the stairs to his seat, Chloe, too, is surprised to see him. With a serious expression, Kong apologizes to Instructor Lee for his tardiness. Still surprised, Lee responds that it's fine and tells Kong to take his seat. Seeing Kong, the students in the class begin to talk and murmur, wondering if he has always looked like that. Some remark that Kong has become more handsome than before. The scene then shifts to after class, where the students are heading to the cafeteria. Chloe approaches Kong and asks him if something happened. Kong replies that nothing is wrong. Chloe then tells our boy that he has been absent for a few days, so she thought something might be wrong, and asks if it's because of the battle training. Kong remains silent for a moment, then, with a smile, informs Chloe that he had a severe fever over the past few days and thanks her for worrying about him. Chloe says she's glad to hear that, but she still doesn't seem entirely convinced. Seeing her doubt, Kong thinks it's only natural for her to be suspicious. Over the past few days, our boy has been tormented to the point where his mental state nearly collapsed, as if going through severe withdrawal. He couldn't eat and locked himself in his room, burying himself in bed, praying for the pain to stop. It was the price of using a damaged weapon. The pain was worse than anything our boy had ever experienced. But that wasn't the only strange thing. The face Kong saw in the mirror had the same bone structure, but his expression had become colder, and even parts of his hair had turned white. Our boy realizes that the changes he's experiencing are the penalty of the divine power, the blessing of the sword god. In the present, Kong thinks that Chloe seems to feel guilty, which is understandable since she was the last person he fought and met. Kong knows he needs to explain everything to her. Kong then suggests to Chloe that they have dinner together, as he promised, tonight. Chloe is both surprised and happy to hear this. However, Kong adds that this time, our boy wants to eat Chloe's cooking. Chloe happily agrees, saying, "Of course," and promises to do her best, excitedly mentioning that she can't wait. Seeing her enthusiasm, Kong thinks Chloe is really looking forward to the dinner. Chloe then tells Kong she will cook whatever he wants and asks what he'd like to eat. Kong replies that he hasn't had fish in a while and recalls that the last time he had fish was at Chloe's dorm. However, he couldn't eat it because it was too expensive. At that moment, our boy senses something behind him. He looks around to see what he was sensing, and it turns out to be Chloe's brother, Knox. Chloe is shocked to see Knox there. Noticing her reaction, Kong asks if she knows him, but Chloe remains silent. Our boy then walks straight toward Knox. As they come face to face, Kong asks Knox if he has something to say and tells him to speak up instead of just staring. Kong also warns him not to keep glaring at him, but Knox continues to stare, his eyes filled with a strange aura. Chloe intervenes, telling Kong that he doesn't need to pay attention to Knox, though our boy is puzzled by the look in Chloe's brother's eyes. She then calls Knox brother, and Chloe states that she specifically told Knox not to come and asks him why he has shown up. Hearing this, Kong realizes that Knox is Chloe's brother. He notices that, though Chloe's voice is sharp, it's trembling, which means she must be scared. Knox responds by telling Chloe that Kong doesn't seem strong and questions whether she's sure she wants to be with someone like him, even if it means breaking the Auditoria family's rules. Frustrated, Chloe replies that whether it's about the Auditoria or anything else, it's no longer her concern. Knox replies that once someone is born into the Auditoria family, they are bound to it forever. Meanwhile, Kong thinks that younger sister is speaking as she is a rebel. On the other hand, older brother is speaking as he is in a historical drama. Knox then tells Chloe to leave this poor man and return to the Auditoria. Frustrated, Chloe shouts, telling Knox not to dare call Kong that. Shocked, Kong thinks Chloe should lower her killing intent, thankful that all the students have already gone to eat. Kong begins to understand the situation, as he remembers everything now. The Auditoria is an organization of shadows, specializing in infiltration and assassination. They appear later in the game, and though people say that, on the battlefield, the Auditoria members are not as powerful as other hero families, when it comes to stealth attacks, they are unmatched. From a young age, their children undergo intense training, raised to become instruments of killing. It's said that every member of the Auditoria family is incredibly strong. Now, Kong realizes that Chloe comes from the Auditoria family. Looking at Knox, our boy recognizes the face of someone accustomed to killing. Now, Kong thinks it all makes sense. The Auditoria family likely eliminates anyone who threatens their order to maintain control. Our boy also considers that, even here, he wouldn't hesitate to kill if necessary, and he could probably justify it. Kong then looks at Chloe, who is trembling. He thinks that all Chloe wants is to live a normal life, but like his own connection to the blessing of the sword god, Chloe was born into a family of killers, a place that won't allow her to live a peaceful life. A life where she constantly has to kill, like a machine. It must be unbearable. Kong reflects that he is not a hero. Our boy can't be and doesn't want to be. But even though Kong can't save the world, he can at least help change one girl's life. Kong tells Chloe not to worry, assuring her that he will talk to Knox. He admits to himself that, despite everything, he hopes the blessing of good intentions stays with him, as it's more than just a curse. This power won't allow Kong to lose. In the end, Kong realizes he has come full circle. Despite his efforts to escape the sword god's blessing, he can't run from it. Kong recalls a line from a comic that said, "There is no comfort in the place someone runs to," which Kong finds to be profoundly true. He realizes that if he can't escape, he might as well push forward. After all, our boy's name is Kongjiyama, geometry meaning sword, and Ma meaning demon. Kong moves forward and tells Knox to follow him, as he intends to take him down. The scene then shifts to the faculty office, where Instructor Lee is sitting, deep in thought. He senses something strange about Kong, noticing that his face seemed devoid of all emotion. Suddenly, Instructor Lee receives a call informing him that a student has requested access to the subspace. Shocked, Lee asks for the student's identity and their opponent. He falls silent when he hears that the student requesting to enter the subspace is Kongjiyama, and his opponent is Knox Auditoria. The scene shifts to a room where our boy sits alone. Kong reflects that there are still 15 minutes before the subspace duel begins. He thought the process would be more complicated, but everything went smoothly. Kong then remembers the media's warning to be cautious if he's serious about this duel. Even though subspace doesn't affect reality and no physical damage carries over, the mental toll remains. Still, Kong thinks that as long as our boy wins, that's all that matters. Kong can hear the noise from the waiting room and understands that watching a fight is exciting, but he didn't expect the atmosphere to be this lively. He also reflects on how, in the past, he used to try to remain unassuming, but now it feels like all of that effort was pointless. Next to him, Chloe sits worried and crying. Seeing her, Kong thinks that she must be blaming herself. He gently tells Chloe not to worry, reassuring her that it's not her fault. Chloe even lent Kong her weapon, so she shouldn't be concerned. Everything will be fine. Despite his words, Chloe still looks worried. Chloe tells Kong that her brother is strong, to which our boy replies that she is strong as well. Chloe then explains that her brother, Nox, is a genius with unparalleled talent in the history of the Auditora family. When it comes to throwing weapons, Nox is the best, and by the age of 14, he was already known as the greatest master of night techniques. Hearing this, Kong wonders who came up with such a title, Greatest Master of Night Techniques. Our boy realizes that it has always been this way. No matter how hard he tries to avoid it, in the end, he has no choice but to face this decision. Kong then recalls his master from his previous life, who told him he was destined to wield a blade for the rest of his days. Kong reflects that even his master wouldn't have expected that in Kang's second life, he would still be using a sashimi knife like this. Just then, an announcement calls for the selected student to enter the training arena. Kong simply states that he's heading out. Before leaving, Kong tells Chloe that there are many geniuses in this world, but in the end, our boy will be the one to win this duel. As Kong steps into the arena, the crowd starts cheering loudly, expressing their belief in the special student and encouraging Kong to give everything he has in the duel. The students have been waiting for a fight like this for a long time. Kong, on the other hand, feels like a Roman gladiator, as he didn't expect such a large crowd. He notices that several star-class students are present, including Abel, Leon, and others. Kong wonders if they don't have anything better to do, as their presence only adds unnecessary pressure. Meanwhile, Nox appears frustrated. Emitting his aura, he states that Kong doesn't understand what he's getting into. To Nox, it seems our boy can't tell the difference between bravery and arrogance. Nox then asks Kong how he dares to challenge him with such a pitiful weapon. In contrast, Kong senses that Nox's killing intent is off the charts and wonders if Nox has truly lost his mind. Kong tells Nox that a true monster doesn't care about weapons, which only angers Nox further. Emitting the full scale of his aura, Nox declares that he will teach our boy a lesson. Kong notices that Nox is wielding 2 S-rank weapons, and on top of that, he is using one of his top-tier blessings to conceal this world, the Blessing of the Crow. Now, our boy can feel Nox's true killing intent, and Kong acknowledges that he is serious as well. Kong also possesses 2 weapons, his sashimi knife and the one Chloe gave him. As they face each other, the duel begins, and they enter the subspace. Both of them charge at each other with full force. Kong manifests the Painlessness Blessing and the Sword God's Blessing as well. Outside the subspace, the students watching the match are surprised, as they cannot see Nox and our boy attacking at all, assuming this was merely a battle between 2 weak students. However, Kong and Nox are striking at each other with incredible speed, moving so quickly that only their auras can be seen. We return to the audience, where Rachel is sitting with Abel, stating that this fight is becoming interesting. Abel, surprised to see that the weak-looking kid she met at the park can fight like this, watches intently. Back to the duel, both Nox and Kong appear to be evenly matched. However, as Nox sees an opening, he uses his special technique to strike at our boy. To Nox's surprise, Kong is able to dodge the attack. Undeterred, Nox employs another technique called Three-Legged Crow, closing the distance between himself and Kong in an instant. Our boy is taken aback by this display. Kong finds himself surrounded by Nox's aura technique, and with a smirk, Nox declares that this duel is over. Yet, Kong takes a stance and in an instant, dodges Nox's technique. Nox is astonished to see that Kong has evaded this move as well. The scene shifts to the audience, where one student remarks that although he can see glimpses of the fight, the second-year student is clearly superior, as the first-year student is preoccupied with dodging. Another student replies that while the second-year student seems impressive, they cannot underestimate a year of battle experience. On the other hand, Abel thinks to herself that anyone watching this duel carefully can tell the truth. The second year is attacking fiercely, but the first year is easily dodging every strike, seemingly refusing to fight back. We return to the duel, where Nox finally realizes that what Chloe said is true. Kong is not an ordinary student. Even after using the blessing of the crow to take down Kong, Nox finds that our boy continues to dodge the attacks effortlessly. Focused on speed, Nox acknowledges that he must be even more cautious, especially since he can execute a wide-range attack in a single strike. The more Nox observes Kong, the more frustrated he becomes, particularly because our boy is accomplishing all of this with a kitchen knife. At that moment, Kong drops his sashimi knife, surprising Nox, who wonders what Kong is planning. Our boy then takes a stance, pointing the kitchen sword that Chloe gave him toward Nox. Seeing this, Nox becomes filled with anger, thinking that Kong is trying to mock him with that ridiculous stance. A commoner cannot dare to mock Nox like this. He begins to gather his aura, and wings start to appear as the surroundings become enveloped in Nox's aura. As Nox prepares to strike at our boy, Kong charges forward in an instant and strikes Nox directly, catching him off guard and preventing any movement. Kong remembers the need to follow the rules without attracting attention. This feeling is like a curse that continually chases him and controls his body. Now, he realizes he cannot escape the power of the blessing of the sword god. Nonetheless, Kong is determined to cut it down. We see that Kong has severely injured Nox's right arm, rendering him unable to move. The audience, including Leon, is stunned by this turn of events. Kong states that whether the power he possesses is a blessing or a curse, he will use it, and with that, he bids farewell to his peaceful future. The whole arena is filled with smoke as the subspace barrier has been turned off, and the students in the audience are shocked by what they have just witnessed. In the arena, Nox is on his knees, while our boy stands confidently, unsheathing his sword. Abel and Rachel can't believe what they have just seen. The announcer then declares the duel has come to an end, and the students begin murmuring among themselves about the match. Kong wonders if he should have expected such a reaction, but realizes there's no turning back now. After all, our boy achieved this with just a kitchen knife, and it was Kang's first time facing an opponent as well. He starts to feel uneasy, though he finds some consolation in the fact that both the Mao brothers and Nox were inside the subspace during the fight. Kong is impressed by the subspace's specifications. On the other hand, Nox can't believe he lost the duel. Now, he understands that Kong is just as strong as Chloe had described. From Nox's perspective, Kong possesses incredible battle sense, honed through experience. However, Kong reflects that anyone could have sensed Nox through his intense killing intent, which ultimately worked to Kang's advantage. The duel's results are displayed on the screen, and the announcer declares the winner. The freshman from Tiger Class, Kong. The duel ended in just 25 seconds. The students are stunned to see that a first-year special admission student defeated a senior so easily. Kong, realizing the impact of his victory, thinks to himself that there's no turning back now from the peaceful life he once imagined. This is the path our boy has chosen, and Kong resolves to endure it with sheer will and determination. The scene shifts to the following day, where students are still buzzing about the duel. They've learned that the senior whom the special admission student faced was from the auditor family. Yet even someone that powerful was taken down by freshman Kong. Meanwhile, Abel sits alone, lost in thought, contemplating our boy. She reflects that Kong Jiama is always on her mind, as he's the only person everyone in the academy seems to be talking about. Yesterday's duel was shocking for Abel, to say the least. She couldn't believe what she had witnessed. Kong displayed remarkable swordsmanship, using only 2 kitchen knives. Abel had always taken pride in her knowledge of swords, being the daughter of a swordmaster, but now she finds herself feeling hopelessly naive. She never imagined someone could be that skilled with such ordinary blades. Abel's thoughts shift, and she realizes that she is still curious about the person who had defeated her. She wants to know who they are, driven by the desire to defeat them next time. Then, She remembers her grandfather mentioning that the top student this year wasn't from her classroom. Connecting the dots, Abel concludes that it might have been Kong. Anger rises within her as she considers the possibility, and what's even more frustrating is that our boy is actually stronger than her. Abel begins to wonder what Kong was thinking when she had called our boy weak and proudly told him about her family motto. Frustrated, she stands up abruptly, slamming her hands on the table. Hearing the noise, Rachel wakes up and asks Abel what's going on. Abel quickly calms down and apologizes, assuring her that it's nothing. Rachel, unconvinced, asks if Abel is sure. Abel explains that she hasn't been able to train recently, so she's feeling a bit sluggish. As a true friend, Rachel probes further, asking what's really going on and pointing out that something seems off about Abel's expression. Abel pretends not to understand, but Rachel presses her, teasing that maybe Abel is just hungry. Abel denies this, so Rachel jokes, asking if she left her equipment at home. Abel replies no. Then, Rachel playfully asks if Abel is having boy trouble, catching Abel off guard. Abel blushes, shocked by the question. Seeing her reaction, Rachel laughs, commenting that she didn't think Lady Abel would be interested in romance. Abel, still blushing, insists that's not the case. Rachel then playfully asks about the lucky boy Abel seems to be thinking about, suggesting it might be Leon. With a straight face, Abel replies no. Rachel, noticing Abel's unusual response, finds it odd that she's still apprehensive about Leon. Then Rachel asks if it could be that special student from yesterday. Abel's expression quickly changes, and seeing this, Rachel feels proud of her intuition. She grabs Abel's hand and says, "Let's go." Abel asks where they are headed, and Rachel replies, "To the Tiger class, of course." The scene shifts to the Tiger class, where Rachel confidently enters. All the Tiger class students are shocked to see them. As they walk forward, Abel tells Rachel they should go back, but Rachel reassures her not to worry. At that moment, Rachel climbs onto a desk to look for our boy. A Tiger class student approaches and warns Rachel that, regardless of her status, she shouldn't be standing on the desk. That's going too far. But Rachel ignores him and continues scanning the room until she finally spots our boy sitting with Chloe. Seeing Chloe, Rachel briefly wonders if she's our boy's girlfriend, but quickly dismisses the thought, thinking that this only makes things more fun. Chloe, who had been smiling, suddenly has her expression change when Rachel approaches Kong and blows in his ear. Both Chloe and Abel are stunned by Rachel's boldness. Our boy wakes up groggily and doesn't immediately understand what's going on. As he looks at Rachel, she apologizes for waking him up and asks, "Your name is Kong, right?" Rachel admits she didn't know who our boy was before what happened yesterday in the subspace. In his mind, our boy is surprised to see Rachel and wonders what she's doing here. As Rachel reaches out to touch Kong, Chloe, filled with anger and slipping into her Yandra mode, demands to know Rachel's identity and what she's trying to do. Rachel is caught off guard by Chloe's sudden change in demeanor. Meanwhile, Kong is shocked, thinking that this must be the danger his instincts had been warning him about. Chloe's personality has completely flipped, and Kong grows even more concerned when he notices that Chloe now has a box cutter in her hand. Frustrated, Kong thinks about the possibility of a fight breaking out in the classroom, realizing this is a situation he's never encountered in the game before. He can't figure out why things are spiraling out of control so suddenly. At that moment, Abel steps in, trying to stop Rachel and asking her what she's trying to do, reminding her that this isn't their classroom. With a smile, Rachel says, "What's the matter, Abel? Can't I say hello?" She then walks over to Chloe, patting her on the head and saying, "You shouldn't interrupt when the adults are talking, and it's not safe to play with sharp objects either." Chloe, filled with anger, looks like she's getting ready to strike. As Rachel turns to speak with our boy, Chloe sees an opening and lunges at Rachel with the box cutter. Kong and Abel are stunned, but Rachel effortlessly blocks Chloe's attack by grabbing her hand. "You're slow," Rachel says calmly. "I thought you were just a kid, but it seems you've got quite a short fuse." Abel steps in, urging Rachel to stop making a scene, but Rachel doesn't listen. She pushes Chloe away as if she were nothing, though Chloe manages to regain her balance and land perfectly on her feet. The students in the class are shocked by the exchange, while our boy just wants to leave. Rachel, a high-class student and the niece of the Spear Saint, lives by the clan's motto. Skills are useless in the face of overwhelming strength. Rachel then asks Kong if Chloe is his girlfriend. Kong quickly replies, no, but he can feel Chloe staring at him intensely. Despite the tension, our boy tells Rachel that Chloe is just his friend. In his mind, Kong wonders what kind of situation he's gotten into. As he looks around, he notices that Abel is there too, something he didn't realize at first because he was so frazzled. Kong, still trying to make sense of everything, asks, why did you and Abel come looking for me? Rachel, with a teasing grin, replies, well, it seems like Abel was interested in you and wanted to see your face. Flustered, Abel immediately denies it. When did I ever say that? She exclaims. Rachel responds with a playful smirk. Isn't that why you came here? Abel quickly corrects her. You're the one who practically dragged me here. Rachel shrugs. I just thought you wanted to see Kong. That's why you followed me. Abel, clearly embarrassed, retorts, that's not true. Meanwhile, the students in the class start whispering among themselves, wondering what's going on and why Abel and Rachel are arguing. Abel, now shyly and with a hint of frustration, says, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I didn't ask to come here to see Kong. Hearing this, our boy thinks to himself that Abel should just leave. He then states, if Abel and Rachel don't have anything else to do, then they should just go. Both Rachel and Abel are surprised by his bluntness. Rachel moves closer to Kong and says, you're really an interesting guy, and I like guys like you. Our boy replies, that's a relief to hear, but I'm far from interesting. Rachel playfully responds, don't be like that. How about we meet up after class and spend some time together? Angered, Chloe suddenly shouts, get away from my Kong right now. Hearing this, Rachel starts laughing, but Abel, equally frustrated, begins to emit a powerful aura. Sensing Abel's rising anger, Rachel smirks and says to Kong, it was fun meeting you. I'll see you later. Kong, trying to put an end to it, tells Rachel, don't come back. Rachel waves him off with a grin and replies, don't be so cold. As Abel and Rachel leave, Rachel lovingly says her goodbye to Kong, which only frustrates Chloe even more. Meanwhile, our boy just wishes he never has to see Rachel again. As Rachel leaves, Abel can't help but glance back at Kong before exiting. The scene then shifts to the corridor outside, where Rachel reflects to herself. It's one thing to have a cold attitude, but seeing Kong face to face, there was something there, she thinks. Kang's gaze had been unsettling, and Rachel realizes that he far exceeded her expectations. Kong is definitely a step above all the students I've seen since the school started, she muses. Initially, Rachel had gone to the Tiger class just to tease, but now she believes she might have gained something unexpected. My clan pulls no stops when it comes to recognizing only the most outstanding warriors, she thinks. In that sense, Kong might be a valuable resource. It's only natural that he's caught the eye of the invincible Empress, she concludes with a cheerful smile. Rachel then turns to Abel and apologizes. Confused, Abel tells her, you should apologize to the Tiger class students for causing that ruckus, not me. But Rachel replies, it's not about that. It's about Kong Jiama. She then adds, and I'm not going to yield. Abel is shocked to hear this, realizing that Rachel might be more serious about Kong than she had thought. The scene shifts to Knox, who is in the hospital recovering from his injuries. Anger courses through him as he contemplates killing Kong, having lived his entire life without experiencing defeat. As the genius of the Auditor family, Knox thinks to himself about taking care of Kong at night. The mere thought of Kong only fuels his rage, prompting him to rush toward his room. Knox intends to mobilize the entirety of the Auditor family with the authority of the entire clan. He believes he can deal with Kong easily. After handling Kong, he is confident that Chloe will return to the Auditor family as well, given that her potential is on par with, if not greater than, his own. Now is the time to strike, Knox thinks, envisioning the power of the House of Order combined with the pinnacle of his Nightfall techniques. He is determined to show Kong exactly what he is capable of. However, as Knox opens the door to his room, he is stunned to see our boy already sitting there, casually eating an apple. Seeing Nox, our boy states, "You're finally here." The scene shifts to the classroom where, frustrated, Chloe sits alone after seeing Kong talking with other girls. Observing her expression, Kong senses that Chloe seems upset, but he recalls that Chloe was the one who had the box cutter earlier. Meanwhile, Chloe, visibly angered, wonders about Kang's relationship with those girls and if he might have feelings for any of them. Suddenly, Kong calls out to Chloe, surprising her and prompting her to brighten up with a sweet smile. She asks if he needs anything. Noticing the box cutter still in her hand, Kong thinks she should probably put it away first. Getting to the point, Kong asks Chloe how Nox is doing. Caught off guard, Chloe pauses before informing him that Nox is currently in the Academy's medical ward. Kong remarks that it's unusual for someone to get injured in the subspace. Chloe replies that she hasn't actually visited Nox yet, so she doesn't know much, but mentions that she heard Nox was admitted despite having no visible injuries. She assures Kong that it should be fine and there's no need for him to worry. In his thoughts, Kong reflects that while it's true he defeated Nox, however, Kong doesn't believe that Nox is so weak as to be traumatized. He hopes that Nox isn't planning anything drastic. Kong then pats Chloe on the head, asking if she can tell him where Nox's room is, knowing this is the best way to handle her Yandere tendencies. In the present, Nox is stunned to see Kong sitting in his hospital room. Kong asks if he can eat the apple nearby, though he's already halfway through it. He then remarks on the wealth of the Auditor family for providing such a spacious room for one person. Surprised, Nox asks how Kong got into the ward, only to freeze when he sees Kong reaching for a knife. Nox wonders if Kong is there to finish what he started, but to his surprise, Kong merely picks up the knife and begins peeling the apple with impressive skill. Confused, Nox watches as Kong neatly slices the apple and places it on the table for him. Before leaving, Kong casually advises Nox that if he has trouble digesting regular food, he should stick to eating fruit. Frustrated, Nox thinks he could take down Kong right here and now by catching him off guard. However, Kong calmly warns Nox that if he even thinks about revenge, he himself will eliminate the entire Auditor family. Shocked and frightened, Nox collapses to the ground. Outside, Kong reflects that Nox is now little more than a candle that could be snuffed out at any moment. It seems his will has been completely shattered. Kang's bold intimidation worked well, especially considering that the Auditor family is one of the world's most formidable assassin groups. While Kong knows he couldn't take on an entire clan, he figures he could manage around 10 people in 30 seconds if necessary, though he'd rather avoid that scenario entirely. Looking up at the sky, Kong feels as though he's standing in the eye of a strange storm. He thinks that he's slowly getting accustomed to life in this world. As long as Nox doesn't stir up any more trouble, Kong no longer needs to worry about him. However, our boy has another issue to handle. The girl Kong most wants to avoid, Rachel. Kong has no intention of getting involved with her, as in the original game. Rachel approaches the main character first but is later attacked after the main heroine, Abel. Kong thinks he needs to take things slowly, especially with midterms approaching, for which he needs to be prepared. Checking his phone, Kong states that he's going to take this seriously, as a reward is a reward, and this time it's Murasame, a weapon he desperately needs to fight effectively for more than 30 seconds. Kong then schedules the midterm date on his phone. This test involves subduing a demonic monster in groups of 5, regardless of class. The Academy places heavy emphasis on teamwork, believing that while individual skill is important, trust in comrades is even more crucial on the battlefield. Although Kong finds this setup test annoying, he's fine with it as long as he finds the right teammates to carry him through. The monster featured in this test is a deer-ant creature, the merman, a particularly foul-looking beast, even in the game. Now, Kong is about to see this monster face to face. Although our boy has worked with fish all his life, he feels uneasy about encountering this creature in real life. Kong muses that if these monsters were mermaids, at least they'd be easier on the eyes. Sitting on a bench, then he recalls that mermaids are considered demonic humans in this world and are part of the demon forces. Demonic humans are far more dangerous than demonic monsters, but thankfully, students only have to deal with the merman, sparing them from facing demonic humans. Kong reflects that it has already been a month since he arrived here, and he finds the nights in this world surprisingly peaceful. Speaking of peace, it has been 700 years since humans and demons swore a truce. However, just as human history isn't free from war, this world has also seen many conflicts, both large and small. For example, Yasmin, the commander of the 6th Legion, once claimed he would revive the commander of the 1st Legion, crossing the line of the armistice. After a week of battle, humanity emerged victorious, and the 7 heroes were born. Although 3 heroes fell, neither faction wished to escalate the conflict further, and peace has continued to this very day. Looking up at the sky, our boy reflects, so this is peace. The more Kong thinks about it, he wonders if Awakens, the one who sealed the 1st Legion commander alone, was even human. Checking his phone calendar, Kong notes that humanity has only 3 years left until the 2nd Human-Demon War, where even the Demon King will be a fighter. Our boy realizes that worrying about this won't change anything. Instead, he should focus on his midterms. However, he finds it irritating since he still needs to find teammates, and he has no friends at all. Just then, Kong realizes he's now the most famous student at the academy. If I can use this to my advantage, he thinks, won't that solve the problem? Living quietly for 3 years seems impossible anyway, so Kong intends to form a strong group and ace his midterms. Kong shifts his goals from living comfortably and quietly to living comfortably, even if it means not staying under the radar. A week later, in the classroom, the instructor asks the students to form groups for their exam, but to Kang's surprise, not a single student invites him to join their group. Kong thinks this is bad. He wonders if the other students are still afraid of him after the duel. Looking back, Kong notices Chloe is also alone. He realizes she's in a similar position, having been regarded as an outsider since that incident. Approaching her, Kong asks if she hasn't found any cadets to partner with. Chloe confirms that she's still alone. Concerned, Kong inquires if she's okay, mentioning that he's used to this, but she used to have friends. Chloe assures him that she's fine, thinking to herself that as long as she's with Kong, she'll be okay. Kong then suggests that, in that case, she can partner up with him, though he still needs to find 3 more people. Smiling, Chloe agrees with him. In his mind, our boy thinks that Chloe's capabilities are nothing to underestimate. The goal of the test is to capture as many mermen as possible within the 1-hour time limit, and given that Kong only has about 30 seconds, Chloe is like 1,000 soldiers to him. Smiling, Chloe says she's excited, and Kong notes that she seems genuinely happy. Suddenly, to Kang's shock, Rachel comes running in, telling him, "Let's play." Frustrated, Kong asks Rachel why she's here again. Rachel replies that she just told him. Meanwhile, Chloe's expression shifts as she goes into Yandere mode, ready to confront Rachel. Kong quickly realizes he can't let this situation spiral out of control. He tells Rachel to leave, just for today, as he has other things to take care of. Rachel responds, asking why her Kong is being so cold to her, to which Kong firmly tells her to stop calling him her Kong and to leave the classroom. Ignoring him, Rachel then asks if Kong has a group for the test. In his mind, Kong sighs, thinking that Rachel never listens to what people tell her. Frustrated, he replies that he hasn't found a group yet. Excited by this, Rachel invites Kong to join her group. Frustrated, Kong asks Rachel why she chose him as her partner, noting that there would have been a long line of students eager to team up with her if she'd asked for someone else. Rachel responds, explaining that those students aren't fun, while Kong, on the other hand, seems like he'd make the test enjoyable. Kong then tells Rachel that he's already teamed up with Chloe, but Rachel assures him that it's fine. Her group has 2 open spots. Hearing this, Kong thinks to himself that, beyond the reward, Rachel must not realize that teaming up with him could risk her grades. He recalls the saying, "Hate the game, not the player." Looking over at Chloe's expression, Kong finally tells Rachel they'll join her team. Rachel then playfully warns him that he can't back out now. Kong, curious, asks about the other group members, and Rachel surprises him by asking if he knows Leon, mentioning that Leon is super famous. Kong is genuinely stunned, wondering what kind of misdeeds he must have committed in a past life to end up entangled with the game's heroines. Our boy can't quite grasp how this situation came about. Even though Kong might stand out and occasionally cross paths with key people, it usually doesn't lead anywhere. But Leon Van Reinhardt is a different matter entirely. He's the main character of the game. Our boy realizes he has no idea how things will turn out from here, but it seems certain Kong will somehow be to blame. He even tried to see if Kong could switch groups, but Rachel had already submitted his name on the application before she even approached him, leaving no room for adjustment. Frustrated by the thought, Kang's irritation rises. Just then, Chloe approaches Kong in her intense, almost Yandere mode. She asks if something is wrong, noticing that he hasn't looked well since Rachel left. Kong, surprised by Chloe's attention, explains that he's just a bit overwhelmed by the prospect of taking the exam with the Star Class cadets. Chloe reassures him confidently, saying that no one in the Star Class is stronger than Kong. Kong thanks her, thinking to himself that he was the one who asked Chloe to team up with him in the first place. There's no way Kong can leave without Chloe in good conscience, and as he thinks about it, our boy realizes he couldn't ask for better people to take the test with. Deciding to stay optimistic, Kong asks Chloe when and where the group meeting is. Chloe responds that Rachel mentioned meeting at the cafe in the main building at 6. Noting the time, Kong suggests they head over, and Chloe happily agrees. The scene shifts to the cafe, where Chloe is cheerfully enjoying her smoothie. Meanwhile, Kong is shocked to discover that Chloe's smoothie cost 50,000 won. He thinks to himself that the only drink under 10,000 won was a coffee, so our boy ordered it, but it tastes terrible. Since this cafe is run by an outside company, faculty cards don't work here, and Kong decides he won't be coming back often. A few moments later, Rachel arrives with the rest of the team. She apologizes for being late, and Kong recognizes Leon but not the other members. Leon approaches him, extending his hand and warmly saying it's nice to meet Kong. Our boy shakes Leon's hand and introduces himself as well. Leon tells Kong that he was impressed by what he saw in the subspace a few days earlier and feels reassured knowing Kong is part of the group for the exam. Kong, impressed by Leon's presence, realizes that Leon is the main character he played as in his previous life. As they sit down, Leon suggests they start with introductions, and Rachel cheerfully agrees. Leon introduces himself first, stating that he's the group leader and a student of the Star Class. He adds that he somehow ended up becoming the leader and, although he has his shortcomings, he looks forward to working with everyone. Kong admires Leon's positive attitude. Rachel then mentions that, since everyone already knows her, she'll pass the introductions to Batten, who is sitting next to her. Batten introduces himself as a student of the Star Class and a speed weapon specialist, adding that he likes heroes, which confuses Kong. Chloe then introduces herself, stating that she's from the Wolf class and is here thanks to Kong. Hearing this, Rachel starts to smile, which frustrates Chloe, but she calms herself, thanks Rachel for the invitation, and states that it's a pleasure to meet everyone. Everyone is impressed by Chloe's well-spoken introduction. Finally, our boy introduces himself, mentioning that he's in the same class as Chloe. After the introductions, Leon suggests they begin the presentation. As Leon starts, Kong is surprised by the level of detail. Leon explains that during lunch today, their class instructor will distribute files to the group leaders, containing a map of their examination site, Scopuli Island. Leon further explains that they will be teleported to the island through a subspace gate. Though only the gate itself is subspace, the island is real, meaning students can actually be injured by the demonic beast there. Continuing the presentation, Leon shows everyone their assigned area on the northeastern coast, where 3 groups, including theirs, will hunt the mermen on the island. However, there is a limited number of mermen available. The exam's objective is to hunt as many mermen as the limit allows. Everyone listens attentively to Leon, and as he wraps up the presentation, he asks if anyone has questions. Batten raises a concern, noting that Scopuli Island is known for having mermaids, which could be risky. Leon reassures him that the instructors have thoroughly researched the area in advance to ensure the students' safety. Chloe then asks if groups within the same zone are allowed to ambush or battle one another. Leon replies that the objective is strictly to exterminate demonic beasts, and conflict between groups would likely lead to disqualification. He then asks if that answers Chloe's question, and she nods. Meanwhile, our boy thinks to himself that, unfortunately for Leon, their team does indeed include an assassin. Leon concludes the meeting, reminding his team members to prepare for the midterms. He also tells them to meet again tomorrow for a positioning meeting. As everyone leaves, only Leon and our boy remain. Kong realizes that, since he ended up sitting in the corner, he and Leon are now the last ones left, making the situation feel awkward. Our boy thinks he should hurry and leave, so he stands up to go, but Leon calls out to him. Leon asks Kong where he's from, catching Kong by surprise. Kong thinks to himself that he's heard a question like this before, though this time it feels fundamentally different. Looking at Leon's expression, our boy can't tell what Leon is thinking, as Leon is directly asking where Kong is from. Kong feels that something is off, as Leon could have asked him earlier when everyone was introducing themselves. He can only assume Leon has a specific reason for asking now, after everyone else has left, but with a serious expression, he admits he can't shake the feeling that Kong is somehow similar to him. Hearing this, Kong considers that while the official language in this world is Korean, thanks to the game, it doesn't mean other cultures don't exist here. Leon then apologizes for asking such an odd question out of nowhere. Leon then tells Kong to pretend he didn't hear anything and starts to leave the room. Kong stops him and asks where Leon himself is from. Kong realizes he acted impulsively by grabbing Leon, but he knows he wouldn't be able to sleep if he let the question go unanswered. Smiling, Leon responds that he's from Germany, then leaves the room. Kong is left stunned and confused by the revelation. Kong still can't figure out what Leon is thinking. Later that day, Kong reflects on what Leon said to our boy, as a curious thought crosses his mind. Could Leon have come from another world too? As outlandish as it sounds, Kong can't help but wonder. After all, there's no rule stating that only one person could enter this game setting. When the blessing of the word God was active, Kang's senses felt strangely heightened, so our boy decides to test it. Unsheathing his knife, he activates the blessing of the sword God, and immediately hears a voice telling him that Leon's existence is indeed of this world. Shocked, our boy realizes he's felt this sensation before. When he activates the blessing of the sword God and concentrates, he can faintly hear a voice. Yet thinking about it gives him a headache, one that even surpasses the blessing's usual protection from pain. Nevertheless, Kong is certain that the Leon he encountered today is unmistakably the same Leon he played in the game. No actor in this world could replicate Leon so perfectly. He wonders if Leon really only intended to ask which country our boy came from. However, that doesn't explain why Leon told Kong that he couldn't help but feel our boy was similar to him. Kong then decides this will be the only time he gets involved with Leon. If anything like this happens again, Kong can always go to the media. He thinks it's best to keep his thoughts straightforward. Our boy also finds it strange how calm Kong remained in a situation he wanted to avoid, perhaps another effect of the blessing. Just then, a window pops up displaying Kang's stats, showing he's made quite a bit of progress. Our boy's mental fortitude and armament are still the same, but Kang's physical fortitude has increased slightly due to recent training. Kong believes his armament will increase once he acquires Murasame. He also notices that his assimilation level has risen significantly and appears close to unlocking, making him wonder if it's related to his recent actions. However, Kong finds it frustrating that he doesn't fully understand it himself, and it's not as if he can ask someone else about it. Finally, Kong is shocked to see that the duration of the blessing of painlessness has increased by 10 seconds. Additionally, its cooldown time has decreased, making Kong feel happy and proud of the progress he's made through training. Our boy feels great too. Time passes quickly, bringing us to the arena on the day of the midterm exams. Kong reflects on the subspace, noting how it has a completely different vibe compared to the training ground subspace. The rest of the team calls out to Kong, with the roles set. Rachel and Chloe will be at the front. Leon and Batten will provide support, and Kong will be at the rear guard. Our boy is both impressed and surprised by everyone's equipment. Rachel wields the S-rank gear, the Vermilion Phoenix halberd, while Leon doesn't seem to have Bamong yet. Kong is puzzled to see that Batten's gear is a recorder, and Batten becomes frustrated when he catches Kong staring. Rachel explains to Kong that Batten's gear is actually one of the few S-rank pieces specialized in healing. Kong is surprised to hear this. After all, a healing S-rank armament is incredibly rare, with only a 1 in a million chance of winning it in the game. Its appearance also contributes to its specs, and Kong steps closer to Batten for a better look. Flustered, Batten tells Kong not to come any closer. Then, the announcer declares that the first-year midterms will now commence. Instructor Lee adds that, judging by the students' expressions, everyone seems prepared. Lee tells them he'll keep it brief since they should already be familiar with the rules. If a student encounters something they cannot handle, they should retreat. He reminds them not to forget that they're still cadets, not yet heroes, and they don't need to take unnecessary risks. Lee also mentions that if any student becomes injured or wishes to surrender at any time, they should contact the supervising instructor. Leon then turns to his team, saying that it's almost time and that they should start preparing. He encourages them not to be nervous and to give their best effort. Our boy thinks that it's finally beginning. Just then, Chloe approaches Kong, and he asks her if something is wrong. Chloe asks Kong if it's strange that she feels anxious now, mentioning that she remembered mermaids can appear on Scopuli Island. Our boy reassures her, saying that the instructor confirmed everything has been thoroughly checked beforehand, so there's no need to worry. Chloe nods and replies that she understands. In his mind, Kong recalls that back in Sicily, mermaid sightings were frequent and often caused significant damage. Although humanity has a truce with demonic beings and they are rarely seen outside dungeons, the persistence of these rumors suggests that the conditions for mermaid appearances are still not fully understood. At that moment, Instructor Lee instructs the students to get ready to enter the subspace. Kong pats Chloe's head, telling her not to worry. In her mind, Chloe feels reassured, thinking she has nothing to fear with Kong by her side. As they enter the subspace, Chloe looks around in confusion. Kong calls to her, reminding her to stay focused. Meanwhile, Leon realizes he's unable to contact the supervising instructor, and he and his team members find themselves in a cave with no connection. They have no idea what just happened. Suddenly, a mermaid appears in the subspace, leaving Kong and the rest of the team shocked. The scene shifts to a few moments earlier, before the mermaid's appearance, on Scopuli Island. Except for Kong, the rest of the teammates are feeling sick. Leon comments on how Kong seems fine, to which our boy replies that he doesn't usually get seasick. At that moment, our boy spots a merman. Kong is surprised to see it, but the merman quickly runs away. Our boy notes that the merman seems smaller than he expected and feels a bit foolish for being so serious about it. He thinks Kong might not even need to use his weapon, though Kong had already planned to take it easy in the rearguard position. Leon informs Kong that once they reach their assigned area, there will be fully grown mermen, which are nothing like the smaller ones they've just seen. Leon adds that their first priority should be to head to the location Chloe went to scout. They move deeper into the forest, with Leon warning everyone to stay alert. Suddenly, Chloe appears, returning from her scouting mission. Leaping from tree to tree, she lands right in front of our boy. Kong is startled by her sudden entrance and asks if she had been climbing trees on her way back. Chloe confirms, explaining that it was the best way to avoid being noticed. Leon asks Chloe about the situation ahead. Chloe reports that approximately 500 meters ahead, there is a cave. As the group moves forward and spots the cave, Leon senses and estimates that there are about 50 to 60 mermen inside. Our boy thinks to himself that if they hunt these mermen down, their team will almost certainly secure first place in the midterms. However, he also considers the risks. For the leader, ensuring the safety of the team is just as important. Injuries could occur, and Kong and the others might end up trapped in the cave with no means of outside communication. Should the team take the risk or opt for a safer detour elsewhere? The decision ultimately rests with Leon, the team leader. The scene then shifts to a few days earlier. Leon is briefing the team and tells Chloe he will rely on her to scout the area when they land on the island. He adds that Batten will handle the healing with his blessing. Hearing this, our boy remarks that he still finds it interesting that Batten is a healer. Frustrated, Batten snaps at Kong to stop talking nonsense. Leon then assigns Kong to guard the rear against any potential threats. Our boy reflects that he seems to have gotten the easiest job. Leon further explains that he will lead everyone from the center, emphasizing that the team cannot just rush in recklessly. He assures them that he will join the offense if the situation calls for it. At that moment, Rachel asks Leon about her role. Leon confidently replies that she will be the one to face the mermen head-on and take down as many as she can. Leon expresses his trust in Rachel's abilities, believing she is more than capable of handling the task. Returning to the present, Kong observes Leon's expression and realizes that Leon has made his decision. Leon calls for Rachel. Responding immediately, Rachel hurls her spear at the cave with incredible strength and speed, taking down several mermen in a single strike. Without hesitation, she charges into the cave, retrieving her spear and continuing to take down the mermen in her path. Meanwhile, Batten uses his spell to heal Rachel and restore her stamina. As all the remaining mermen rush toward her at once, Rachel remains undeterred. With a smile on her face, she effortlessly takes down approximately 25 mermen on her own. She marvels at her own blessing, thinking about how incredible it is. On the other hand, Kong and the others are astonished by Rachel's display of strength. Seeing this, Chloe unsheathes her sword, ready to join the fray. Aura begins to emanate from Chloe's sword as she activates her blessing of a cat. In an instant, with a single strike, Chloe takes down several mermen. The remaining mermen attempt to retaliate, but she easily dispatches them as well. Meanwhile, on one side of the cave, Rachel is relentlessly taking down the mermen she encounters, while Chloe does the same on the opposite side. As the two approach each other, Kong and Leon grow concerned, fearing that neither of them will stop in time and that they might collide. Just as Rachel and Chloe draw closer, a huge merman appears and attacks. However, the two of them, using their blessings in unison, swiftly take down the large merman. Afterward, Rachel comments that Chloe seems a little faster than before. Chloe, with a serious expression, retorts that she was the one who took down the merman. With that, Rachel and Chloe move to opposite sides once again. Our boy feels relieved to see the situation resolve without any issues. Leon, having taken down a few mermen himself, remarks to Kong that it seemed like Kong was worried about those two. Our boy replies that it turns out his concern was unnecessary. Leon and his team successfully take down all 60 mermen. Leon then tells our boy to have more trust in his teammates. With everything settled, Leon suggests they move on. Watching him, our boy reflects on Leon's decisiveness and leadership, noting that these qualities form the solid backbone of the team. He realizes that Leon is truly irreplaceable, and his presence here feels undeniably real. As Kong wonders if Leon might casually ask where our boy is from, a sudden strike hits Leon from behind, catching everyone off guard. Shocked, the team turns to see that the attacker is a demon mermaid. Rachel, stunned, questions what a mermaid is doing here. Equally shaken, our boy recalls thinking earlier that everything had been going too smoothly. Now, faced with the dire situation, Kong must decide whether the team should run or fight. He knows that attempting to flee with an injured Leon could result in the entire team being taken down. Rachel urgently tells Kong to try contacting the instructor about the mermaid. However, our boy realizes that with all communication cut off from the outside, alerting the teachers might only cause them to panic even more. Kong states that it seems he is the only one still clear-headed. Taking charge, he orders Batten to focus his healing blessing on Leon. Kong then instructs Chloe to leave the cave, alert the nearby cadets to evacuate, and call for the instructors. However, Chloe insists that she wants to stay and help Kong. Kong firmly explains that fleeing with Leon will be difficult, so Chloe must hurry and act before the mermen launch another attack. Reluctantly, Chloe agrees, saying she understands, and runs toward the cave's exit. After Chloe leaves, Rachel asks Kong what they should do next and whether he has a plan. Batten and Rachel, noticing Chloe's departure, question Kong about why he sent her away. Kong steps forward and calmly tells Rachel and Batten to handle the smaller mermen. Surprised, Batten asks what Kong intends to do. Our boy closes his eyes, thinking to himself that he has always disliked dealing with small fish. They require no real skill to handle. With a smile on his face, Kong unsheathes his sword, declaring that taking care of the big fish is his specialty. Our boy reflects that the protagonist fell to just one normal attack, highlighting the stark difference in strength between humans and demons. Kong knows he can't confidently claim victory, even with the blessing of the sword god. In the original game, it was nearly impossible to subdue a magic-wielding demon without a full party. Now, faced with a boss that typically requires a large-scale raid, our boy realizes there's no turning back. With Chloe needing about 10 minutes to return, Kong concludes that there's only one option. He must defeat the boss mermaid in just 40 seconds. As Kong activates the blessing of the sword god, our boy smiles, thinking it's been a while since he's gone all out. Meanwhile, Rachel continues taking down the mermen relentlessly. When several mermen attack her at once, she blocks their strikes with her spear, pushes them back, and finishes them off with a single powerful blow. However, her fatigue is starting to show. Batten, noticing Rachel's exhaustion, wishes he could assist her, but healing Leon is already pushing him to his limits. While Leon's wound is severe and healing slowly, it is recovering nonetheless. Batten, recalling Kang's absurd strength from their subspace duel, struggles to believe that Kong is facing the demon mermaid alone. Just watching the fight fills Batten with fear. Although it's late, Batten wonders if he should try to stop Kong. Meanwhile, the demon mermaid launches a strike at Kong. Kong swiftly dodges the attack and charges forward. Our boy analyzes the situation, noting that the mermaid appears to be a demonoid specializing in long-distance magic attacks with water properties. While Kong doesn't know magic, our boy thinks to himself, a mermaid is just a fish after all. Our boy then leaps into the air, closing the distance between him and the mermaid. As Kong strikes, the mermaid manages to dodge his attack and head straight for Batten. Batten is stunned as he sees the mermaid charging toward him. At the last moment, our boy steps in, striking the mermaid with his knife. The attack lands, but the strike is too shallow to inflict any real damage. Wasting no time, Kong charges forward again, but the mermaid dives into the nearby pond, disappearing beneath the surface. Frustrated, Kong thinks to himself that this demon is truly a mermaid, and predicting a mermaid's movements is no easy task. Our boy observes that the mermaid is deliberately targeting those who are injured. Regardless, Kong resolves to keep his team members safe. Kong turns to Batten and asks if he's all right. Batten, both relieved and surprised, replies that he is fine. Before leaving, Kong tells Batten he's relying on him to take care of Leon and calls him a hero. Batten is taken aback, watching Kong face the mermaid alone. Hearing Kong call him a hero triggers a memory for Batten. He recalls telling Kong that justice and bravery, when sacrificed for the sake of others, and the ability to turn despair into hope are what define a hero. Yet, despite enrolling in the world's best hero training school, Batten hasn't encountered anyone who embodies these qualities, not even among the elite dragon class. Batten reflects that this is why he joined this group with Rachel. He was certain he would find the hero he was looking for in Leon. Hearing this, our boy smiles to himself, thinking that Batten might just be right. With a smile, Batten informs Kong that, sorry to say, Kong is far from being a hero in his eyes. Kong responds that even if he were one, he'd refuse the title. Returning to the present, Batten watches as Kong faces the demon mermaid alone. Despite the odds, Batten starts to believe Kong might actually have a chance of winning. The demon mermaid then unleashes a technique, summoning multiple manhwa-fish to strike at Kong. Although Kong dodges them initially, he's caught off guard when the manhwa-fish begin to follow him. Kong quickly carves a path for himself using his knives, managing to evade the manhwa-fish. However, the relentless manhwa-fish continue their pursuit. Kong, undeterred, uses his full speed to dash around the demon mermaid in an attempt to outmaneuver her. Spotting an opening, the mermaid abruptly shifts her focus and charges straight toward Batten. Rachel shouts, warning Batten to be careful. Just as the mermaid is about to strike him, Kong intervenes, landing a blow on the mermaid. However, the strike is shallow once again and fails to cause significant damage. Our boy steels himself, realizing that these shallow strikes won't be enough to take the mermaid down. We see that the mermaid has taken some damage from Kang's strike. The mermaid attempts to strike at Kong using her mana, but her attack instead hits the cave wall, creating a massive hole. The impact distracts the mermaid, causing her to lose control of her manhwa-fish. As a result, the manhwa-fish hit her directly, sending her tumbling beneath the cave's debris. At that moment, the scene shifts to a few students who are speaking with Instructor Kim. Suddenly, the two students hear a loud sound. Saki Ryojo, daughter of the Bao Saint, remarks that it sounded like a roar, while the blue-haired girl adds that she also saw a flash of light coming from the cave ahead of them, just before they found Instructor Kim. As the rain begins to fall, Saki tells the blue-haired girl that they need to get to the wounded and move quickly. With the rain pouring, the blue-haired girl realizes she likely mistook lightning and thunder for the earlier flash and roar. She replies with a confident, of course. Saki insists they need to return to the academy as soon as possible. The scene then shifts back to the cave. Inside, Batten continues to protect Leon, while Rachel remains locked in battle with the remaining mermen. They all start to retreat, leaving Rachel surprised by the sudden shift. Our boy thinks to himself that he couldn't have landed a fatal blow on the mermaid earlier because he was mindful of Leon. He recalls the mermaid being crushed under the debris when the cave collapsed, but Kong believes the mermaid is probably not dead. Just as he expected, the demon mermaid emerges from the rubble. Seeing this, Kong thinks, "I knew it. A demon mermaid wouldn't die from something like that." Filled with rage, the mermaid charges toward Kong. Standing firm, our boy calmly removes his coat, positioning himself right in front of the advancing mermaid. Kong tells Rachel that since the mermen have been more or less dealt with, he's leaving Batten and Leon in her care. Rachel nods and replies, "Got it." On the other hand, Batten is in disbelief, struggling to comprehend that Kong is actually facing the demon mermaid head-on. Batten reflects that he once thought Kong was just a madman, but now he wonders if he's witnessing the birth of a legend. Smiling, our boy thinks to himself that now, finally, he can focus. With 10 seconds to spare, Kong resolves to make up for lost time. As the mermaid closes in, Kong releases his maximum power, charging forward with the intent to destroy everything in his path. The scene shifts to Chloe, running as fast as she can. She appears exhausted but refuses to stop, pushing herself forward with unwavering determination. Using her blessing, Chloe overcomes the obstacles in her path. However, after relying on her blessing for an extended period, she begins to feel intense pain in her legs. Exhaustion sets in as her power is nearly depleted. Yet Chloe remains resolute, determined to provide even the slightest help. Despite the growing pain, Chloe continues running, recalling how our boy instructed her to contact the instructors. She thinks of Kong, whom she considers the strongest person she has ever met. Yet, Kong always found fighting burdensome, unsheathing his blade only when absolutely necessary. Chloe admired his choices, believing Kong always made the best decisions. However, the mermaid is an immensely powerful demon, and Chloe feels a surge of frustration. If only she had been stronger, she could have helped our boy. At that moment, a sudden explosion echoes from the cave. Chloe freezes, shocked at what she sees. Still, Chloe kept running, desperately searching for help and hoping that when she found someone, Kong would still be alive. Suddenly, her blessing wore off, and she nearly stumbled, but she managed to regain her balance. "I can't fall here," she thought, forcing herself to keep moving. Chloe's urgency grew as she realized she needed to find someone quickly. She began shouting, "Is anyone here? Please help." Suddenly, Chloe sensed something ahead of her. Though her senses were dulled from exhaustion, she strained to identify it. She suspected it might be mermen. Frustrated but resolute, Chloe steadied herself and prepared to strike. Just as she was about to attack, she saw it wasn't mermen. It was Abel with her team. Relief flooded her as she passed Abel in a daze, thinking, "Finally, a person." But Chloe was too exhausted. She collapsed to the ground, completely drained. Abel, startled to see her in such a state, listened as her team speculated about a possible ambush. However, Abel silenced them, recognizing Chloe immediately. With great effort, Chloe managed to say, "Please, help Kong." Then, she collapsed unconscious in front of Abel. The scene shifts to the cave, where Batten reflects, wondering if there will ever be another day as astonishing as this. Watching Kong, Batten thinks to himself that Kong resembles an extraordinarily skilled swordsman. Kong isn't merely fighting the mermaid demon. Our boy is completely overwhelming it. Batten is certain that the scene unfolding before him will be etched into his memory for the rest of his life. Unlike the swift movements our boy displayed during the subspace duel, Kong now relies on precise, calculated, and lightning-fast techniques. With unmatched skill, our boy deflects the mermaid's strikes and closes the distance, delivering a decisive blow. A clean hit lands on the mermaid, leaving both Batten and Rachel utterly stunned. Batten thinks that even Rachel, successor of the Spear clan and someone who grew up among the strongest warriors, has likely never witnessed anything of this caliber. For the first time, Batten feels that the mermaid might actually be defeated. However, Rachel suddenly shouts a warning, telling Batten to be careful. Acting swiftly, she pushes Batten aside, and together they narrowly evade the mermaid's retaliatory strike. Rachel tells Batten to stay alert, snapping, "Do you want to die?" The mermaid's strike has caused a massive hole in the cave wall. Seeing this, Batten realizes he had momentarily forgotten the danger of their situation, mesmerized by how surreal the scene was. Their opponent is a demonoid capable of wielding powerful magic. Batten reflects that a blade against magic is already a poor matchup. What if the mermaid uses a spell that cannot be countered? Meanwhile, our boy stands firm, facing the mermaid after dodging her last strike. Angered, the mermaid begins casting her special spell, gathering mana into her hands. She unleashes a barrage of mana bullets, aiming them at Kong from all directions to prevent him from dodging. Reacting swiftly, our boy rushes in another direction, but the bullets continue to pursue him relentlessly. With no other choice, Kong deflects the incoming projectiles using his knife. During this exchange, he notices that his blade is coated in poison. Seizing the opportunity, Kong employs a precise technique to strike the mermaid with the poison knife, catching her off guard. Wasting no time, Kong closes the distance and goes for the final, decisive blow. The mermaid summons mermen to block Kang's strike, shocking our boy. Seizing the opening, the mermaid gathers mana, preparing to unleash a powerful attack on Kong. Alarmed, Batten and Rachel shout, urging Kong to move away. However, caught off guard, Kong realizes he cannot evade the incoming strike. Just as the mermaid's attack is about to land, Kong fully channels the blessing of the sword god. One of our boy's eyes turns black, signaling the awakening of his newfound power. In an instant, Kong finds himself standing in a serene pond under a clear sky, confused about where he is. Suddenly, a bright light approaches him, accompanied by a voice. The voice asks Kong a question, "Did you slice?" Kong, surprised but resolute, replies, "I did." At that moment, Kong fully masters the blessing of the sword god. Empowered by this realization, Kong grabs his knife, and with a single, decisive strike, he takes down the mermaid, severing the magic of the demonoid entirely. We see our boy standing victorious against the mermaid. Batten and Rachel are stunned to witness a freshman single-handedly defeat a demonoid. Shortly after, Kong, injured from the battle, collapses to the ground. Seeing this, Rachel rushes over to check on him. Meanwhile, Batten feels a sense of relief knowing that Leon is unharmed. At that moment, Batten senses movement near the entrance of the cave. Initially, he worries that the mermen who had fled earlier might have returned, but he is relieved to see that it's Abel and her team. Abel and her team are shocked to find a mermaid's remains in the cave and begin to wonder what transpired there. Abel grows visibly frustrated upon seeing Rachel embracing Kong, questioning why Rachel is so close to him. Her gaze shifts to Leon, and she thinks to herself how the team looks as though they've been to the brink of death, yet the leader appears unscathed. Abel reflects on Leon's seemingly absurd luck. She informs Leon that she has contacted the academy and that instructors are expected to arrive within an hour. Finally, Abel demands an explanation for what happened in the cave. Batten replies that the so-called idiot instructors who explored this island earlier must have overlooked something, which he finds laughable. Abel acknowledges his frustration and tells him she understands, but insists that Batten should now explain. Batten, in turn, asks if Abel is ordering him around. Abel sighs and retorts that Batten always interprets things so oddly. What she said was merely a request. Batten smirks and remarks that it's not like Abel would believe him anyway. Still, he urges her to listen, claiming that explaining things is one of his specialties. Abel listens as Batten recounts the events. A mermaid appeared out of nowhere, and Kong single-handedly defeated it. Abel raises an eyebrow, questioning the plausibility of the story, but Batten affirms that's exactly what happened. As Abel reflects, she finds it hard to believe. A freshman from the academy defeating a demonoid on his own sounds more like a tale from her grandfather's bedtime stories than reality. Yet, as absurd as it seems, the evidence suggests it's true. After all, why would they fabricate such a story? It feels like something straight out of legend. Abel then recalls her lineage, a descendant of the famed hero Baylor Joaquin and his disciple, Aaron Nibelung. Abel's radiant roots have granted her a special class since birth, in other words, a noble bloodline. Nevertheless, Abel has worked tirelessly to ensure she isn't overshadowed by her heritage. Through her relentless effort, her talents have flourished, propelling her to where she stands today. However, when it comes to Kongjioma, Abel can't help but find the disparity between their skills almost absurd. At first, she experienced a swirl of emotions: fear, dread, and admiration. Perhaps, Abel thinks, she has been just an ordinary person all along. Shaking off these thoughts, she instructs her teammate to use her healing blessing on Kong. As her teammate channels the blessing into our boy, Abel observes him. Despite being battered and on the brink of death, Kong, someone her own age, fought a demonoid alone and emerged victorious. The thought frustrates her deeply. Batten, breaking the silence, reminds Abel that she mentioned contacting the academy earlier. Abel confirms this. Batten then suggests that, for now, it might be wiser not to disclose the full details of what happened to the instructors. Abel, surprised, asks why he would suggest such a thing. Batten remarks, "Didn't the instructors say they scouted this island beforehand?" Abel nods, confirming, "That's right." Batten finds it strange that despite Scopuli Island's size, a demonoid emerged from a cave so conspicuous that even cadets could easily notice it. Something doesn't add up, Batten adds, his tone skeptical. Abel grows serious as she listens. Batten continues, "It's just a guess, but..." At that moment, Leon, wearing a grave expression, interjects, "Are you suggesting there's someone from the demon faction within the academy?" Batten quickly clarifies, "That's not exactly what I'm saying, but I can't completely rule out the possibility." Abel reflects on the situation. It's undeniable that the cave is far too noticeable for cadets to have missed, just as Batten pointed out. If it weren't for Kong, Leon's group would have been wiped out by the demonoid. Still, Abel wonders how such a thing could have happened. While there have been conflicts, both major and minor, during the 700-year truce, never once had the demons dared to target cadets of Joaquin Academy. Moreover, the truce explicitly states that such an act could serve as grounds for war. The weight of this realization shocks Abel as she processes the implications. Noticing Abel's expression, Batten comments, "I know what you're thinking, but you're blowing things out of proportion." He adds, of course, "It's not a bad idea to be cautious about the possibility of a spy within the academy, but it's far too early to jump to conclusions." Leon then speaks up, "If that's the case, we need to get our stories straight. If there really is a spy, Kong will undoubtedly become a target once they hear he defeated a demonoid alone." Batten nods in agreement. "That's true, but I don't think it's right to keep this a secret, considering everything Kong has done for us." Hearing this, Abel suggests, "If that's how everyone feels, why don't we try speaking to my grandfather first?" Her words leave everyone momentarily stunned. The scene shifts to the Academy's hospital, where Kong regains consciousness in his bed. Raising a hand into the air, he mutters, "I'm alive." However, the memory of the mermaid's final attack flashes through his mind. Before it died, the mermaid had struck Kong with a magic sphere, an attack he hadn't been able to avoid. But our boy had seen it. Kong had managed to sever the mermaid's magic in two before it could burst, using his weapon with precision. He recalls the sensation vividly. It was definitely water. Kong wonders what that strange feeling was, as after activating the sword god's blessing, he experienced sensations he can't quite put into words. Opening his status window, Kong notices that his mental fortitude has increased by 1. Reflecting on the battle, he realizes he didn't feel fear when facing the mermaid and assumes it must be due to this improvement. Additionally, Kang's assimilation rate has also increased. The status window indicates that the next unlock condition will be met once his assimilation rate reaches 15%. Kong ponders whether this skill unlocked when he sliced through the mermaid's magic. At that moment, Media bursts into the room and hugs Kong tightly. She exclaims how worried she had been, swearing that she'll hold every single instructor who explored that area accountable. Kong, struggling to breathe, gently protests, "Media, please don't hug me so tightly." Media quickly apologizes, explaining that she's just relieved to see him awake. As Media rummages through her bag, Kong notices it and wonders, is that a dimensional pocket? Media then pulls out Kang's reward for the midterm exams, the legendary Murasame. Our boy is surprised to see the sword Murasame. Then Kong notices an information window indicating that Murasame is a B-rank weapon at level 25. Murasame is a Japanese sword meaning rain shower, and it is said to possess an edge that glistens. As Kong examines Murasame, Media states that she hopes Kong likes the sword. She apologizes for giving Kong this sword in such a place, saying that he should have received it more officially. Suddenly, Media notices someone at the door. She calls out to Siegfried, an old man, asking why he is waiting outside and telling him to come in. Siegfried complains that he has asked Media many times not to call him that, and as he steps inside and stands in front of our boy, Media continues to argue with him. Seeing their behavior, our boy thinks that both of them are acting like children. Kong then inquires why the Sword Emperor, Siegfried, is here. Media tells Kong that Siegfried has heard everything from Kang's teammates. On behalf of Awakens Academy, Media bows and apologizes from the bottom of her heart. She states that the Academy is to blame for what happened during the midterm exams. Because of this incident, Kong, his teammates, and all the other students nearly lost their lives. Media swears on her honor as the director of Awakens Academy to uncover the truth behind the incident. Siegfried tells our boy that Kong saved the cadets. Hearing this, Kong replies that he only did what he could. Media explains that while Kang's actions were nothing short of remarkable, they need to keep this incident a secret until the full truth comes to light. She confesses her shame as the director, admitting that the mastermind behind the event is within the Academy. Media apologizes again for placing this burden on Kong. Our boy replies that it's okay. He understands. Hearing this, Media smiles and comments that Kong should act like a kid and throw a tantrum or two sometimes. In her mind, she thinks that Kong is like an old man trapped in a teenage boy's body. The scene then shifts outside, where Media and Siegfried are walking through a corridor. Media suddenly stops and asks Siegfried if he remembers the day they first met after enrolling. Siegfried was lying on a bench outside, and when Media told him to stop being lazy, he drew his sword without a word, telling her not to order him around. Siegfried replies that he doesn't remember that. Media smiles, saying it feels like it happened just yesterday, yet she has already spent 60 years here. She finds it laughable how she hasn't even filled a tenth of Awakens Academy's history. Back when both she and Siegfried enrolled, the place was already ancient and full of history. Although there have been large and small incidents over the centuries, the Academy has nurtured and protected its cadets for 700 years. Suddenly, Media becomes angry and releases her aura, shattering the window in front of her. Siegfried is surprised. Media recalls that before the midterms, she received reports that the instructors completed multiple preliminary surveys of Scopuli Island. Even if it was rare, the island was known as a place where mermaids might appear, so she took every precaution. Yet the tragedy still occurred. Siegfried tries to calm Media down. Media apologizes, saying she was lost in thought. Siegfried grows serious seeing Media like this, but then Media smiles happily and mentions how amazing Kong is, having taken down the mermaid all by himself. Blushing, Media asks Siegfried what he thinks of Kong. Siegfried remains silent, but in his mind he ponders Kang's natural-born talent. Siegfried has seen countless individuals hailed as the chosen ones of their era, only for their brilliance to fade. Families hungry for glory and honor throw around the word genius carelessly whenever a child shows the slightest talent. Siegfried himself forbade the use of that word, even for his granddaughter Abel. But for Kong, whose talent is so unfathomable, the word genius might truly apply. Siegfried wonders how far Kong will go once he gains more experience. Could Kong reach the heights Siegfried once dreamed of? As Siegfried walks past Media, He tells her to stay put at the academy for now. Media smiles and remarks that Siegfried said he would help her clean things up. Siegfried replies that he doesn't remember such a promise. The scene shifts to the wolf class, where our boy is sitting in class. Kong thinks about the fact that the incident with the demonoid mermaid on Scopuli Island is being kept secret under the headmaster's instructions. He finds it a bit awkward, but perhaps his classmates are carefree because he stopped the mermaid. After being discharged, the first thing Kong did was visit the school's forge to reshape and enhance Murasame. In truth, the sword was just a metal rod to him, considering the sword god's blessing, so reforging it was a must. The blacksmith, Volander, tells Kong to retrieve his sword 1 week later and, since it's the 700th anniversary event, he won't charge Kong. Kong thinks he got lucky and hopes the enhancement will be successful. Then, Chloe comes in and asks Kong when he was discharged and how he's feeling. Our boy replies that he's fine and asks about her condition. Chloe says she injured her leg, but thanks to emergency treatment from Batten, the doctor said she'll be able to walk without crutches in a week. Confidently, Chloe adds that she is also an auditor, so of course she's recovering quickly. Realizing she got a bit too excited, Chloe apologizes. Kong is happy to see Chloe doing better. He asks if there has been anything unusual, and Chloe replies that she heard the director and the elders have been at odds. Kong reflects on how, even if he took down the mermaid alone, it wasn't solely due to his efforts. Everyone played their part. Chloe's rescue call, Rachel's clearing of the merman, and Batten's healing and blessings. Kong then wonders what Leon even did. Command? Kong doubts that Leon will defeat the Demon King that way. Could it be that Leon didn't do anything because he got injured first? At that moment, the instructor enters and tells the students to stop what they're doing. He has a few announcements before the training assembly. Standing in front of the class, the instructor says that this might be sudden, but for the time being, there will be someone co-instructing with Instructor Lee in Wolf class. The students are surprised and wonder who this new instructor might be. They are all shocked when they see that it's the Sword Emperor, Siegfried. As Siegfried stands in front of the classroom, the students wonder why the Sword Emperor would be their instructor. Kong, on the other hand, is shocked and thinks, "What is that old man doing here?" The scene then shifts to an underground location, where we see someone fighting a cloaked figure. The cloaked figure apologizes to a girl, who is revealed to be Saki Ryoso, the daughter of the Bow Master. Saki Ryoso is enraged because of the cloaked figure's actions, which have angered the 5th Unit Commander. We discover that Saki Ryoso is actually a demonoid. Saki inquires of the man whether it was truly that difficult to bring Leon back, even though Leon was only half injured. She questions how, despite Leon being a hero candidate, the man failed to complete the task even with the help of a mermaid. Because of his actions, Leon is now comfortably settled at the academy. The man apologizes profusely, but Saki, angered, kicks him, accusing him of not taking her, Saki Ryoko, seriously. She expresses disbelief that a mermaid could be taken down by a group of first-year students. However, upon considering the exceptional talent among this year's new students, she admits she wouldn't be surprised if they were capable of such a feat at that moment. The man reveals to Saki that the mermaid was defeated by just one cadet. Surprised, Saki demands clarification, asking if he means Leon defeated the mermaid alone. The man responds with a firm no. Frustrated by the suspense, Saki orders him to explain himself already. The man then reveals that the one who defeated the mermaid was this year's top student, Kongjiyama. Hearing this, Saki notes with interest that Kongjiyama is a special admission student. With a sly smile, she remarks that things are starting to get interesting. The scene then transitions to the training grounds. Instructor Lee is seen running alongside the students, urging them to count louder as they run, stating that he can't hear them. In unison, the students reply, "Yes, sir," and continue running behind him. Meanwhile, Chloe is sitting on a bench, waving at Kong with a smile. Seeing Chloe, our boy feels a pang of jealousy. Just then, Siegfried approaches Kong from behind and greets him warmly, commenting, "You are running really slow." He inquires if Kong is still recovering from the midterms, to which Kong replies, "No, sir." However, in his mind, Kong wonders what is happening and why the Sword Emperor himself is running alongside him. Kong reflects on Siegfried's remarkable identity, a descendant of the first Sword Saint, and the right hand of Baylor Joaquin, the Sword Saint. Siegfried is Aaron Nibelung, the man destined to inherit the title of Sword Saint, a name as unique and significant as his title. Siegfried is a figure who will later become one of humanity's greatest forces. During the Second Demon War, he will also serve as Leon's swordsmanship master. Siegfried's importance increases dramatically in the latter half of the story, leaving Kong puzzled as to why such a pivotal character is here, running beside him. Our boy wishes Siegfried would go back to Leon, as the main story, which was gradually veering off track, is now completely falling apart. Come to think of it, Kong recalls that Leon never actually ended up receiving the Sword Saint title. It was a significant issue back then, but since Leon can't inherit the Sword Saint title anyway, Kong guesses it doesn't matter. Yet, despite this reasoning, Kong still feels uncomfortable about the situation. Siegfried then tells Kong that the foundation of any warrior lies in physical strength and endurance. No matter how outstanding one's talent may be, it is useless if the body cannot support it. Conditioning, he explains, is the bedrock that enables further growth. Siegfried warns our boy not to cut corners and urges him to keep up. Kong replies with a "yes, sir," but Siegfried retorts that he can't hear him. Kong shouts louder, affirming, "Yes, sir, I understand." Seeing Kang's determination, Siegfried smiles. Then, without warning, Siegfried dashes forward at incredible speed, challenging Kong to keep up with him. Kong is shocked by Siegfried's speed, but despite his best efforts, he still finds himself lagging behind. Frustrated, Kong wonders aloud if the Sword Emperor Siegfried is somehow aging backward. After that, Siegfried gathers the students and announces that, from now on, the use of personal weapons is strictly prohibited unless it is for field training. To the students' surprise, Siegfried then unveils a large assortment of weapons in front of them. He instructs the students to choose one of the weapons and master it, emphasizing that the weapon they pick will become their training focus. The students are shocked by this directive, and our boy notices that among the displayed weapons, there is even a sashimi knife. At that moment, one of the students raises his hand and tells the Sword Emperor that he has a question. Siegfried acknowledges him and asks what it is. The student expresses that, in the long term, it would be better to become proficient with the weapon passed down through their families, so why is its use being prohibited? Hearing this, Siegfried commends the student for asking a good question and explains his reasoning. He states that the basics are more important than anything else. Relying too much on high-grade or inherited weapons can lead students to neglect their training, and it becomes easy to mistake the weapon's power for their own strength. Hearing this explanation, the same student begins to respond, saying, "If that is the case, isn't it actually even more important to learn how to use those weapons and make up for any shortcomings?" Observing this, other students begin to think that this guy is asking all these questions just to get attention. Siegfried, however, calmly responds, telling the students that no matter how well-armed someone is, if their skills are lacking, their weapon will ultimately fail them. He adds, "A master never blames his equipment." Hearing this, Kong nods in agreement, thinking to himself that this is 100% true. Siegfried goes on to explain that once the students master the basics, they will naturally become comfortable with any weapon. Furthermore, he mentions that cadets who can skillfully handle ordinary weapons are more likely to receive higher scores in the class promotion evaluation at the end of the year. Hearing this, all the students become excited and rush to grab the weapons they prefer. Watching the scene, Kong thinks to himself that Siegfried really has a way with words, as the students are now completely inspired. Then Kong spots a sashimi knife in front of him. With a resigned sigh, he thinks, "I knew this would happen," as he reaches out and grabs the knife. Siegfried looks at our boy, and Kong, meeting his gaze, immediately suspects that Siegfried is up to something. His instincts prove correct when Siegfried addresses the students, announcing that today's task is to get accustomed to their chosen weapons. Following this, they will engage in 1-versus-1 sparring sessions between cadets. The students are surprised to hear that the training will take place without the use of the subspace. Some voice concerns, asking whether they might get hurt. Siegfried responds firmly, reminding them that they joined this academy to grow into warriors worthy of carrying on the legacy of the ancestral hero. He explains that true growth as a warrior comes through combat, even when facing the risk of defeat. However, Siegfried cautions that if students swing their swords at each other without proper thought, they can easily cause unnecessary injuries. To prevent this, he announces that he will personally demonstrate proper sparring techniques before the pairing begins. Hearing this, the students become visibly excited, thrilled at the opportunity to witness the legendary sword emperor Siegfried's swordsmanship in action. At that moment, Instructor Lee steps in and reminds the students to keep quiet, emphasizing that there is no talking aloud during lessons. Meanwhile, Instructor Lee is lost in thought, reflecting that, as an instructor at the world's top academy, this moment might be the biggest and worst crisis he has ever faced. Even though it's just a demonstration, the idea of facing off against the Sword Emperor fills him with dread. Instructor Lee grimly concludes that this might truly be the end for him. Just as Lee is about to say something to Siegfried, Siegfried interrupts him and unexpectedly calls for Kong Jiama to step forward and be his sparring partner. Kong is completely stunned upon hearing this. The students were shocked to see Siegfried, the Sword Emperor, standing before them. More importantly, they were thrilled at the prospect of witnessing a demonstration from the legendary Sword Emperor himself. However, confusion spread among the students as they wondered why Siegfried had personally called upon this unknown student. Amidst the murmurs, our boy could hear the students talking about him. Siegfried then turned to Kong and inquired if his injuries had fully healed. Kong replied that he was fine now. Without hesitation, Siegfried instructed Kong to pick up his sword. Our boy couldn't help but think that, even though this was just a sparring match, it seemed excessive. While his condition had improved after a long rest, Kong knew his opponent was none other than Siegfried, the Sword Emperor. Crossing swords with someone of Siegfried's caliber wouldn't end easily. One of them was bound to get hurt. Kong pondered whether this was due to the influence of divine power, as he could sense an unusual craving for a fight within himself. This was far different from the norm, and Kong couldn't ignore the potential consequences of this encounter. Despite the tension, Kong stepped forward and told Siegfried that he was no match for the Sword Emperor and requested that he lower his sword. The students burst into laughter, mocking Kang's audacity, and questioned what he was trying to accomplish. Siegfried then tells our boy, "Does Kong have no pride as a swordsman? How long does Kong think he can live while hiding his power? What is the use of Kang's extraordinary talent if our boy remains a cowardly person like this?" Kong reflects on the word pride, a value he had engraved in his heart ever since our boy claimed the title of the greatest swordsman in the country. That pride, along with his determination, has been the driving force behind why Kong never put down his sword. Our boy realizes that Siegfried's words are a deliberate provocation, a test to measure Kang's resolve. Kong knows that if he succumbs to the provocation in this moment, he will regret it for a long time. Yet, even as he weighs his choices, a professor intervenes, attempting to stop the duel. Siegfried, however, halts the professor, his eyes fixed on Kong. In that moment, Siegfried sees the determination in Kang's expression and understands that Kong has made up his mind. Siegfried acknowledges that he will learn something from this duel. As the scene intensifies, we see our boy holding his sword, activating the blessing of the sword god. The two stand face to face, their swords drawn, ready for combat. Observing Kong, Siegfried is reminded of a vivid memory from his own past, a moment that lingers in his mind even at the age of 70. The enlightenment Siegfried gained through the sword, the time when he was not yet mature, remains etched in his memory. He recalls the one-armed wandering knight and the unparalleled swordsmanship that knight displayed, a mastery undoubtedly within the realm of legend. The person Siegfried has been keeping an eye on since the allocation test is none other than our boy, Kong Jiama. Siegfried believes that Kong holds the clue that could guide him to that legendary realm. As the duel begins, Siegfried strikes decisively. In an instant, our boy appears behind him, effortlessly dodging the attack. But as the Sword Emperor, Siegfried immediately senses Kang's position and swings his sword in retaliation. Kong evades the strike by leaping into the air. From above, he focuses and charges directly at Siegfried with precision. Siegfried manages to block Kang's bold attack with his sword, though he is momentarily shocked by Kang's audacity to charge head-on without hesitation. Siegfried notes Kang's unique sword technique, reminiscent of a swallow in graceful flight. Kong strikes again, but Siegfried blocks the attack. In the exchange, our boy loses control and drops his sword. However, Kong spins around and, with remarkable agility, catches his sword mid-air with his right hand. Without missing a beat, he launches another strike at Siegfried, who once again defends himself, blocking the attack with his sword. Seeing this, Siegfried thinks to himself that Kang's physical abilities are far beyond what they once were. Kong is now able to push Siegfried back with apparent ease. However, Siegfried reminds himself that his sword is not merely a weapon of brute strength. It is not the light. He strikes at our boy with his sword, which begins to shine brightly, radiating an aura of immense power. The scene shifts to a student who watches in confusion, unable to comprehend what is unfolding. The student recalls Kang's previous performance in the subspace sparring match, believing Kong merely got lucky with his matchup. At best, the student thought Kong was just decent among the special students. They can't understand why the Sword Emperor, of all people, is paying so much attention to Kong. Secretly, the student hopes that Siegfried will teach Kong a harsh lesson, imagining the satisfaction of seeing our boy reduced to tears. However, the student becomes perplexed as both Kong and the Sword Emperor appear to stand still, locked in place. In stark contrast, Instructor Lee observes the scene and is utterly shocked. Instructor Lee understands that neither Kong nor the Sword Emperor is simply standing still. They are operating on a level far beyond the comprehension of the cadets. Doubting the Sword Emperor's earlier words, Instructor Lee had never expected our boy to display such remarkable skill and presence. Rewinding a few moments, Instructor Lee had cautioned the Sword Emperor, warning him that if the headmaster found out about this duel, there could be serious consequences. Moreover, the cadets watching from the sidelines could also be impacted by the demonstration of such overwhelming power. Siegfried responds, asking if Instructor Lee truly believes he would cross swords in earnest with Kong. He reassures Instructor Lee not to worry, adding that if his assumptions are correct, Kong will be able to step into that place, the mental realm. Instructor Lee is stunned upon hearing this revelation. Returning to the present, Siegfried reflects on Kang's progress. For Kong to enter the mental realm and withstand Siegfried's strikes, Siegfried cannot help but feel astonished. A duel in the mental realm is an intense battle of wits and willpower, something that becomes evident simply by crossing swords. Yet, in such a short span of time, Kong is already growing, a feat Siegfried finds truly impressive. Recognizing Kang's potential, Siegfried activates his sword spirit protection. His aura flares to life, surrounding him with an intense glow. Siegfried channels this power into a strike aimed at our boy. The students, observing from outside, are awestruck as they witness the Sword Emperor's aura radiating beyond the battlefield. Both the students and Instructor Lee are shocked by the display of power. Instructor Lee begins to wonder if the duel has broken through the mental realm and returned to reality. The scene shifts back to Siegfried and our boy, standing face to face with their swords drawn, poised for the next move. On the other hand, Instructor Lee, deeply worried, thinks to himself that this is nothing like what the Sword Emperor had described. Concerned for the safety of the other students, Instructor Lee decides to intervene before anyone gets injured. Meanwhile, both our boy and Siegfried charge toward each other with incredible speed, their swords poised for a decisive clash. However, just before they can reach each other, Media intervenes, stopping the duel. Angered, Media demands to know what Siegfried is doing to his student, questioning if he has lost his mind. The scene shifts to Media's office, where she is still furious with Siegfried. Siegfried apologizes to Media, but also states that what happened was not intentional. Media becomes even angrier upon hearing this. The story flashes back to the earlier moment when Media stopped Siegfried. Enraged, Media grabs Siegfried by his collar and demands to know if he has gone mad. She scolds him, saying that if he has become senile, he should stay home. Media reminds Siegfried of how hard she worked to secure his position and accuses him of pulling such a reckless stunt on a student. She furiously inquires what he was thinking. As Media looks around, she notices the worried expressions on the students' faces. Siegfried tries to explain, saying that he never intended for things to escalate that way. Turning to look at our boy, Siegfried silently reflects on how he lost control and unintentionally exerted his aura to its fullest. Frustrated, Medea shouts, asking if Siegfried is even listening to her. Siegfried turns to her and apologizes again. Stunned, Medea is momentarily speechless. The scene shifts back to Medea's office, where she reflects that in over 50 years, she has never heard Siegfried say sorry. Yet today, he has apologized not once but twice. Medea finally inquires why Siegfried acted the way he did earlier, pointing out that he unleashed the sword spirit's blessing on a student. And if it weren't for Medea, what would have happened? She inquires. Siegfried replies calmly that if he hadn't unleashed the blessing, he wouldn't have been able to gain the upper hand. Medea is stunned by this admission. She can't believe what she just heard. For Siegfried, a man so full of pride, to admit such a thing is almost unimaginable. Medea is well aware of Kang Jiama's innate talent, but she knows better than anyone just how strong Siegfried truly is. Siegfried then reveals that Kang has already reached the mental realm. Shocked, Medea exclaims that Siegfried himself didn't even begin mastering it until he was nearly 30, and now he's saying a 17-year-old has achieved it? Medea struggles to comprehend how this is even possible. I don't know either, Siegfried admits, but if there's something that can offset experience, he trails off, leaving Medea even more unsettled. She can hardly believe it as she begins to think about our boy. Later, after dealing with Siegfried, Medea approaches Kang to check if he's okay. In that moment, any semblance of dignity she held as an educator or a 7-star disappeared. The emotion she felt toward Kang was something far deeper, fear. It was the same fear she had felt the first time she met the 6th Division commander, Vaesen. Medea wonders why such an eerie feeling emanated from Kang Jiama. Is it because our boy's name includes the word devil? Yet, to Medea, it doesn't feel like a lie. She then turns to Siegfried and asks, "Did you lose?" Flustered, Siegfried quickly denies it, saying there's no way that could be true. Even if Kang's talent is innate, Siegfried insists it still doesn't compare to his own. Moreover, he adds, he wasn't even fully armed during their duel. With a sly smile, Medea responds, "Why are you overreacting? Aren't you the one who always says that masters don't blame their equipment?" She playfully accuses Siegfried of using his lack of equipment as an excuse, making him appear slightly ridiculous. Hearing this, Siegfried becomes visibly angered. The scene shifts to our boy's room, where Kang wakes up, reflecting on his duel with Siegfried. Our boy thinks to himself that the duel ended well, though he finds the Sword Emperor to be quite hot-headed. Kang realizes that if Medea hadn't intervened, things could have turned truly dangerous. As Kang continues to reflect, he considers the concept of the mental realm. Experiencing it firsthand felt surreal to him. The mental realm is a mastery and deep understanding of one's weapon, a heightened, active space that can only be activated when certain conditions are met. It is a realm accessible only to peak masters who have honed a single weapon over their entire lives. For Kang, it was both a strange and enlightening experience. Because of this, even in the world of the miracles blessing God, fewer than 10 heroes can freely enter the mental realm. Leon, the protagonist blessed with the qualities of a hero, required 3 years of private training just to step into the mental realm. Our boy knows this because Kang had stopped playing at that point, but Kang wonders why our boy was able to access it immediately when even Leon took 3 years. Kang reflects on the sashimi knife. Including our boy's previous life, Kang has been wielding the sashimi knife for over 20 years. What's more, every time Kang unleashes the sword spirit's blessing, he experiences a level of concentration that transcends normal perception. The intertwined experiences of this life and Kang's past life harmoniously merge, allowing him to break through difficult situations. That's right, based on our boy's experiences so far, avoiding challenges only makes things worse. Instead of passively going with the flow, Kang resolves to face problems head-on and tackle them step by step. Kang then wonders, should he give it a try? If our boy can learn to freely control the mental realm, he could train in combat without relying on the sword spirit's blessing. With determination, our boy unsheathes his sword. As Kang begins to focus, the surroundings around him start to shift and change. Suddenly, the surroundings shatter, and a hand emerges, touching our boy's shoulder. The aura of the blessing begins to envelop Kang's sword in hand. However, our boy is shocked as the sword mysteriously vanishes right through his hand. Kang finds himself abruptly back in his room, utterly confused about what just happened. The scene shifts to a grand building where the elders have gathered. Elder Claudia addresses the group, urging them to deal with the troublemaker as soon as possible and investigate the top student, Kangjiama. A gray-haired woman interjects, questioning whether Kang might be a candidate for the hero. She adds, "Isn't the true hero candidate Leon Van Reinhardt?" Claudia retorts, stating that Leon is still struggling to properly manifest his blessing. He continues, emphasizing the swordplay displayed by Kang during the class placement exam, an extraordinary feat that even defeated the genius twins. What's more, Claudia adds, media is actively blocking information under the pretense of protecting the student. Everything about this is suspicious from start to finish. Another elder remarks, in any case, the hero's fate is unavoidable. Claudia agrees, noting that if this wasn't already problematic enough, the 7 stars are also causing trouble. He concludes with urgency, the elders must act quickly to eliminate potential candidates. Another elder states, this time, the academy even brought the Sword Emperor. Claudia nods and replies, that's correct. Ever since media, one of the 7 stars, became the academy director, the standing of the elders has been severely weakened. After Basman's defeat, the public only reveres the 7 stars, while the elders are dismissed as outdated relics. Yet, it is the elders who guide the foolish masses and maintain balance. Even now, if a hero were to emerge, the very existence of the elders would be threatened. Another elder agrees. Indeed, for the elders to maintain their power, they need a public enemy. The hero who threatens the Demon King must be eliminated. Claudia reflects silently, acknowledging that he is one of the Academy's elders, but he feels the weight of Saki Ryoso's warnings. Because of Saki, Claudia is exerting all his effort to persuade the elders through sheer force. Saki had informed him that the 5th Division Commander is furious and warned that if Claudia fails to act, the 5th Demon King Division Commander, Air Acre, will take him down. The higher elder finally speaks. Understood, they say, instructing Claudia to issue orders to the Auditor family. The scene then shifts to our boy, who is visibly angered over the disappearance of his sword. Nearby, the blacksmith Vollinger is on the floor, pleading with Kang for forgiveness. We then see the sword, Murasame, with a current rank of E. Its specifications now include a length of 35 centimeters, destructive power of C rank, range of E rank, hardness of E rank, and a growth potential of A rank. Our boy is visibly angered upon seeing this. Vollinger explains, I've been hammering steel for nearly 30 years, but even I have never encountered anything like this. To put it simply, it's as if the sword itself refused to be forged. I had to hastily melt the metal and reforge it, barely managing to give it a proper shape. If any ordinary blacksmith had attempted this, it would have ended up as nothing more than a useless piece of scrap metal. Believe me, I did everything I could. Kang thinks to himself that, despite his 20 years of experience with swords, he finds the craftsmanship impressive. The specifications align perfectly with the blessing, but the hardness remains at an E rank, a clear source of frustration. Vollinger continues, the potential of this weapon is good. If it's reinforced, it will definitely become useful. And while this isn't exactly an apology, if you bring the reinforcement materials, I won't charge you a fee. Angered, Kang asks, what if it breaks again? Vollinger replies earnestly, even at E rank, with a rank growth potential, it will eventually surpass its current limitations. Vollinger explains, this weapon could reach a rank or even higher. There's also the possibility of using the never-fail material, but that can only be obtained from A rank or higher demonic beasts. Hearing this, Kang thinks to himself that A rank demonic beasts are comparable to E rank demonoids, and our boy wonders if he'll have to take down another mermaid. However, Kang doesn't want to risk his life just to reinforce equipment. He also recalls that even lower-rank demons occasionally drop reinforcement materials, but his current funds are a bit tight. Kang then asks, do you promise? Vollinger replies, I swear on my honor as a blacksmith. Our boy shifts the conversation, saying, aside from that, you should refund me half the cost of the leftover scrap metal, plus 1,000 gold. Volander is shocked by this demand and argues, I made the weapon exactly as you ordered. I even said I wouldn't charge you for the enhancement costs. Unmoved, our boy retorts, the B rank sword was reduced to scrap. Considering the market price, this is a fair deal. Frustrated, Volander replies, stop talking nonsense. But our boy calmly states, I was planning to test the sword's performance anyway. This works out perfectly. Scared by Kang's unwavering stance, Volander ultimately apologizes to our boy. Volander reluctantly offers our boy 500 gold, but Kang firmly replies, 1,000 gold. Volander tries to argue, explaining that even the scraps of a B-rank weapon have a different market value, and recovering the original amount is nearly impossible. However, with a serious expression, our boy insists. Having no other choice, Volander finally agrees. The scene shifts to outside, where our boy sits on a bench, reviewing his stats. Kang thinks to himself that after obtaining a new weapon, his armament stats have increased, and additional options have become available. The biggest reason our boy hesitates to use the sword god's blessing is the excruciating pain it causes, but the pain has started to decrease. Kang realizes he needs to level up this skill no matter what. Our boy recalls testing the blessing earlier. While the pain was reduced, it was still unbearable. However, if just one level of improvement can lower the pain this much, consistent leveling might eventually allow Kang to use the sword god's blessing pain-free. Additionally, it seems that armament stats increase whenever Kang obtains a new weapon or enhances an existing one. Now that midterms are over, our boy resolves to make weapon enhancement his top priority. Kang believes that if he continues to grow at this rate, he might finally come to understand the true power he has been given. Perhaps our boy will even figure out how Kang ended up in this world. At that moment, Chloe approaches, inquiring what Kang is doing. Startled, our boy looks up and is surprised to see Chloe. Noticing Chloe's leg, our boy asks if she has taken off her cast and if her body is okay now. Chloe replies with a smile that she's fine but still needs crutches. She adds that she feels stronger than before. Broken bones heal stronger after breaking, she jokes. Hearing this, Kang thinks to himself, bones aren't muscles. Kang steps closer to Chloe and gently picks a grain of rice from her cheek. Shocked, Chloe stumbles and falls to the ground. Alarmed, Kang quickly kneels and asks if she's okay. Chloe reassures him that she is fine. Curious, Chloe then points to something on the bench and asks, what's that? Kang replies, it's my weapon. Chloe's face lights up with excitement as she examines it. Your first weapon? That's so cool, she exclaims. Despite learning that the sword is only E rank, Chloe is impressed. It's hard to believe this is an E rank weapon. It looks so good, she says. Our boy nods and confirms, yes, it's E rank. Seeing Kang's expression, Chloe clarifies, that's not what I meant. I mean, for the lowest rank weapon, it looks amazing. She hesitates for a moment before adding, no, that's not it either. Our boy tells Chloe, it's fine. I already got some money back from the blacksmith, and he said he wouldn't charge for enhancements if I bring the materials. If I enhance this sword enough, it will become usable. Chloe nods and replies, that's right. You were already strong even with just a sashimi knife. With a proper weapon, you'll definitely become even stronger. Hearing this, Kang thanks Chloe. Our boy thinks to himself that, honestly, there's no real reason for Kang to get stronger. Ever since Kang defeated that mermaid, our boy has been able to handle mid-tier magical beasts. The main reason Kang wants to enhance his weapon is to reduce the pain caused by the sword god's blessing. Noticing Kang's expression, Chloe apologizes, saying, I didn't mean to insult your weapon. Kang shakes his head and replies, it's not that, Chloe. It's just, seeing Murasame, the sword I got as compensation, made me sigh. Chloe then remarks on the blacksmith who made Kang Jiama's weapon. Suddenly, she slips into her Yandere mode, declaring, those who make Kang Jiama suffer. All of them must be taken down. Startled, our boy calls out to Chloe, bringing her back to her usual self. At that moment, Kang senses something, though our boy notices that Chloe doesn't seem to sense it. Standing up, Kang walks toward a nearby tree. Seeing this, Chloe asks, "Where are you going?" Without replying, Kong kicks the tree and demands, "What are you doing here?" From behind the tree, Nox falls to the ground. Quickly gathering himself, Nox mutters, "I was careless." Chloe, surprised, gasps at the sight of Nox. Kong returns to the bench, picks up his sword, and sits down, while Chloe takes a seat behind him. Despite the tension, Kong senses no killing intent from Nox and observes that he appears unarmed. Kong then asks, "Is there something you need from me?" Nox remains silent, refusing to answer. Our boy calmly reminds him, "I explained this to you before in a way you could understand." Frustrated, Nox turns away and finally says, "I came looking for you, but not for that reason." "Then why are you here?" Kong inquires. Nox hesitates before answering. "The Academy's elders. They've requested your elimination." Hearing this, Kong is shocked. He thinks to himself that the Academy's elders have made their move. The realization that the elders are targeting him leaves Kong in disbelief. Chloe quickly asks, "Did you come here because of that?" Nox responds, "You've been away from home for too long, Chloe. You've lost your edge." At his words, Chloe immediately prepares for combat and steps in front of Kong. "Stay behind me," she tells our boy. "I'll handle this myself." Chloe distances herself from Nox, maintaining a defensive stance, all while repeatedly calling out to Kong. However, Kong remains seated on the bench, unfazed. Nox observes her movements and remarks, "It seems your instincts are still sharp, Chloe." He then turns to Kong and says, "I don't care what you've been up to, but the Academy's elders are oddly fixated on you. It's not just me. There's a growing sense of unease even within the Auditor family." Nox continues, explaining that the Auditor family has temporarily postponed the elders' request. The Academy elders made their request in secret, bypassing the Academy's head. A direct order to eliminate a mere student goes against the principles of the Auditor family. However, since it's a direct order from the elders, it's difficult to ignore. If the pressure continues, the Auditor family will have no choice but to investigate you. Finally, Nox adds, "Whatever the case may be, Chloe, you're a member of the Auditor family, and you needed to know." Chloe remains silent after hearing this. Observing her reaction, Kong thinks to himself that while Nox came under the pretext of upholding the family's principles, in the end, Nox was truly worried about Chloe. Nox then states, "That's all I have to say," and begins to walk away. Our boy calls out, "Nox." Stopping, Nox turns around as Kong inquires, "What is this? Last time, you said something different." Nox pauses before replying, "Chloe is happiest when she's by your side. Even I, her brother, have never seen her like this before." Kong is shocked by Nox's words. Finally, Nox adds, "Don't let Chloe get hurt anymore," before turning and leaving. Shocked by what he hears, our boy wonders to himself what Nox is talking about. It's not Kang's fault that Chloe hurt her leg. Then, Nox questions how Kong became so strong. Kong is taken aback by the idea that Nox considers him strong. To be regarded as strong, one must be able to withstand threats at all times, like the Sword Emperor. Someone like Kong, who can only maintain that level of strength for less than a minute a day, is far from a level where he can boast about his power. Kong himself can't even think of such a claim. Nox, using Chloe as an excuse, reveals secrets of the Auditor family to our boy, an outsider. There's no way Nox would let that slide. Our boy then tells Nox that he lacks desperation. Surprised, Nox asks what Kong means by that. Kong explains that, regardless of how much of an Auditor Nox is, there's a certain edge that comes from real-world experience. If Nox stays cooped up in the Academy, he will eventually hit his growth limit. To truly grow, Nox needs to venture out, gain real-life experience, and work hard. Only then will he achieve something remarkable. Nox is surprised by this advice. Observing Nox's reaction, our boy thinks that Kong isn't entirely wrong. With that, he decides to leave the conversation and move on. The scene shifts to the classroom, where the teacher is conducting a lecture. Our boy, sitting by himself, reflects on the Academy elders targeting Kong. These elders are descendants of 5 of Baylor Hoken's 7 disciples, a group renowned for their immense influence. not just within the academy but across the entire world. Kong recalls the elders' role in the game, where they were notorious for constantly obstructing the protagonist to safeguard their own power and status. This earned them the nickname Corrupt Remnants among players. However, Kong can't understand why the elders are now targeting our boy. To make sense of the situation, Kong begins writing down the key events our boy has been involved in so far. The top academy admission exam, where Kong faced and defeated the twins. The subspace training session, where our boy confronted and defeated Nox. The midterm exams, where our boy saved Leon. As Kong reviews what he has written, our boy realizes that he has caused quite a stir. It seems Kong has been inadvertently drawing attention to himself. Yet, despite all that our boy has done, it still doesn't explain why the elders would target Kong specifically. At this point, Kang's thoughts shift to Scupley Island, trying to piece together the puzzle. In the aftermath of saving Leon and defeating the mermaid, our boy begins to realize something troubling. Kong deduces that the elders are not targeting him specifically. They are after Leon. Kong was merely an obstacle in their way. Despite the media's efforts to cover up the incident, the fact that our boy defeated the mermaid must have reached the ears of the highest ranks in noble society. The fact that the elders are targeting Leon, a hero candidate, suggests something even more sinister. It becomes clear to Kong that someone among the elders, or perhaps all of them, may be colluding with the demons. The elders didn't just attempt to obstruct Leon. They went as far as to try to kill him, a young student. No matter how corrupt the elders are, this level of betrayal is shocking. Prioritizing their own power over the safety of humanity, and the academy crosses every line. Kong didn't think they could stoop this low. Our boy entertains the thought of storming into the elders' chambers and taking them down immediately. However, he knows it isn't the right time yet. When the time comes, our boy resolves to ensure that the elders are held accountable. Meanwhile, the teacher instructs the students to take notes, snapping Kong out of his thoughts. Kong realizes that he hasn't been focused. He reminds himself of what he needs next, a weapon enhancement. Determined, our boy decides that he'll have to venture into the dungeon to make it happen. First, our boy knows he needs to form a party. Clearing a dungeon alone is too difficult. Kong is certain that Chloe would be willing to help. However, instead of someone as powerful as Rachel, our boy prefers someone more strategic. This thought leads Kong to remember Batten, and he decides to find Batten and ask for his help. The scene shifts to the dragon class, where our boy is interrupted by a student who tells him that this isn't a place where someone like Kong can come and go as they please. Hearing this, Kong thinks to himself, who is this third-rate extra character? With 20 years of experience in the food industry and dealing with countless customers, our boy has encountered people like this before, and he finds it tiresome to handle. Without hesitation, our boy tells the student not to bother him, or else he'll take him down. Angered, the student attempts to strike Kong. Observing the attack, Kong notices how slow the student is and thinks that he could easily handle him. However, before Kong can act, Batten appears and punches the student down. Students start gathering around, curious about the commotion. Meanwhile, Kong thinks to himself, I've heard of strength mages, but a strength healer? That's new. Batten then asks Kong if he came looking for him and suggests they continue the conversation outside. The two leave together to talk. Kong shares his plan with Batten, who agrees that our boy needs to form a party as soon as possible. Batten offers to help Kong recruit party members and proposes a deal. The dungeon rewards will be split among the team, while Kong can keep the materials from the magical beasts. Batten then asks, did I get that right? Our boy responds that if Kong were to gather a party on his own, no one except Chloe would join. However, if Batten helps with the dragon class, it might be easier, or so Kong thought. Batten informs Kong that a party must have at least 4 members to obtain dungeon clearance permits. He adds that if it weren't for academy rules, someone like Kong could easily clear 5 or 6 dungeons alone. Our boy quickly counters, saying, I can't even clear 1 dungeon alone. Hearing this, Batten accuses Kong of lying, reminding him that Kong single-handedly defeated a mermaid. Batten remarks that being overly humble is annoying. Hearing this, Kong thinks to himself that Batten genuinely believes our boy is simply being modest. Batten then comments, it looks like you're doing better now. Our boy replies, thanks to the good treatment, and I rested for a few days. I'm feeling much better now. Batten finally agrees, saying, "All right, fine. I'll take your offer. There's no reason to refuse, and I have a feeling that working with you will be a new experience." Kong thanks Batten, who then inquires, "Do you have any dungeons in mind?" Kong replies, "The C-rank Buffalo Dungeon." Batten responds, "Are you talking about the dungeon in Cheelwyn?" Our boy nods and says, "Yes." Batten remarks, "A Buffalo Dungeon. That's a classic. So, it's me, you, and Chloe. That makes 3 members. Do you have any preferences for the 4th member?" Kong replies, "I'd prefer it not to be Rachel or Leon." Hearing this, Batten laughs and says, "Don't worry. Neither of them will be able to come anyway. Rachel has been in seclusion since she was hospitalized after training in the academy grounds, and Leon is preparing for upper-grade dungeon raids with the 2nd and 3rd-year students." Kong thinks to himself, "That's good." Batten then says, "There is one person who comes to mind. By now, she's probably sleeping there." Surprised, Kong asks, "Sleeping at this hour?" Batten shrugs and replies, "That's just how she is." With that, Batten gestures for Kong and says, "Let's go to the cafeteria." As Batten mentions he needs to buy something, the scene shifts to later that night. Both Batten and Kong arrive at a house. As they enter, our boy looks around, thinking to himself that he didn't know the academy had such a place. Even during Kang's time playing Miracle Blessing M, our boy had never come here. In Kang's past life, our boy was a Japanese cuisine chef, though he never actually visited Japan. Kong always wanted to go but never had the chance. Looking around now, he feels a sense of vicarious satisfaction. Then, Kong notices archery arrows scattered around the place. Before he can process this, Batten finds the person he was searching for, fast asleep inside the house. Batten approaches the girl and tries to wake her up, but she doesn't budge. Batten then tells the girl, "I brought your favorite from the cafeteria." Hearing this, the girl instantly wakes up and eagerly asks, "Where is it?" Batten points to Kong and says, "He has it." Without wasting a moment, the girl rushes toward our boy with incredible speed, grabs the bag from Kong, and they both fall to the ground. It turns out the bag contains chocolate. The blue-haired girl, now lying on top of our boy, enjoys the chocolate blissfully, leaving Kong shocked and unsure of what just happened. Smiling, the girl then looks at Kong and asks, "Do you have any more chocolate?" Our boy reflects on the narrative of Miracle's Blessing, a story centered around the protagonist, Leon, and featuring numerous heroines. Among these heroines is Abel von Nibelung, officially designated as the main heroine by the game developers. While each heroine possesses unique charms and abilities, the game's story highlights Abel and Leon overcoming challenges together, culminating in the blossoming of their love. Even our boy found himself captivated by Abel's charisma, which led to the other heroines gradually fading into the background. Among these, the one who faded the quickest was Saki Ryoso, the daughter of Jialgung. In the present, Saki asks Kong if he has any more chocolate. After making her request, she turns around and comments that our boy looks a bit foolish. This observation resonates with Kong, who realizes that Batten had been thinking about Saki as the last member of the party. Kong now understands Batten's confidence. Our boy knows that Saki Ryoso is a top-tier DPS among ranged attackers. Although her contribution to the main story seems minimal, Saki is a skill-based character distinct from Leon. Her inclusion in Kang's party wouldn't disrupt the central plot, making her a valuable addition. Kong considers that maybe it will be fine. Saki then inquires what brings Batten here. Batten begins explaining the whole story, but Saki interrupts, telling him to stop talking nonsense and get to the point. Batten informs Saki that he and Kong are recruiting for the Buffalo Dungeon raid next week and that they will split the dungeon rewards, except for the horns. Hearing this, Saki walks toward our boy and states that Kong is the one who defeated Nox during the subspace training. Our boy confirms this with a simple yes. At this, Saki glares at our boy, leaving Kong confused about what's happening. Saki then turns around and remarks that since dungeon clear rewards also impact students' grades, there's no real reason for her to refuse. However, she notes that Kong seems less determined than she had expected. Hearing this, our boy thinks to himself that Saki is judging others while being half asleep herself. Saki then apologizes to Batten, stating that she doesn't want to work with someone who appears so unmotivated. Batten tries to convince Saki, reminding her that she witnessed Kang's duel and knows he isn't just an ordinary guy. Saki replies that perhaps Kang's opponents were simply weak. Frustrated, Batten tells Saki to stop talking nonsense. As Kang's opponent was someone from the Auditor family, Batten was about to reveal that Kang had also defeated the mermaid during the midterms. However, Batten stopped himself before he could say more. Instead, he told Saki that he couldn't explain further but insisted she should trust him and join the team. Saki, unconvinced, asked why she should trust him. Frustrated, Batten retorted, demanding to know Saki's excuse for refusing. Watching the two argue, Kang wondered what he should do. Meanwhile, our boy thought to himself that a party member could be greedy or rude, but not both. Kang decided he wouldn't try to persuade Saki anymore. Turning to Batten, Kang said it was enough and suggested they leave, stating that Saki's attitude wasn't good for the party and that they should find someone better. Hearing this, Saki, with a serious gaze, remarked that the dungeon raid wasn't that urgent. Her words caught our boy's attention, and he turned to face her. Without hesitation, our boy reached under his coat and grabbed a sashimi knife, surprising both Batten and Saki. Kang then threw the sashimi knife at the arrow target board, and it landed squarely in the center. Without wasting a moment, our boy threw another sashimi knife at the other board, with equal precision. The knife passed right next to Saki and landed directly in the center of the board. With a straight face, Kang asked if Saki was interested now. On the other hand, Saki was left stunned by what she had just witnessed. The scene then shifts to the next day in the meeting room, where Kang entered with Batten and Chloe, only to find Saki already waiting for them. Seeing her, Batten remarked that Saki was early today. As they all sat down, Saki smiled at our boy and said, "Hi." Observing this, our boy thought to himself that the sashimi effect works every time. Batten, surprised, noticed that Saki had already completed most of the preparations. Saki informed him that the permits were ready. With that, Batten started the meeting. He explained that the buffalo dungeon housed C-rank demonoid buffaloes, commonly nicknamed water buffaloes. These buffaloes were known to charge from a distance, making close combat difficult. However, they were weak to ranged attacks. Batten then mentioned one critical rule. Under no circumstances should anyone open the stone gate at the center of the dungeon. Chloe inquired about what would happen if someone did. Batten replied that rumors suggested it might be some kind of seal, but it was just a hypothesis, as nothing had been confirmed. Saki then reminded everyone that the Academy's permit explicitly required them to leave the stone gate closed, so there was no reason to disobey this order. With a smile, our boy stated that he understood the importance of never opening the stone gate. Seeing this, everyone turned to look at our boy. Surprised, he didn't understand why he was suddenly the center of attention. Batten then asked Kang if he knew what was behind the stone gate. Our boy replied, "No," and added that, obviously, they shouldn't touch it. However, in his mind, Kang knew the truth. There was a hidden boss behind the stone gate. Hearing Kang's response, Batten sighed in relief, stating that he had feared the worst. Meanwhile, our boy thought to himself that the gate could only be opened under specific conditions and was locked by the system anyway. Despite the risk, the efficiency of this dungeon was unmatched. As our boy's thoughts wandered, he noticed Saki eating chocolate again. He commented that Saki must really like chocolate. Saki replied with a smirk, saying, "Intelligent people need chocolate." Suddenly, our boy remembered Chloe. Turning his attention to her, he saw that Chloe had slipped into her Yandere mode and was preparing to strike at Saki. Sensing something off, our boy thought to himself that they were watching. By they, Kang likely meant the elders. Looking at Chloe, our boy asked if something was wrong. Chloe replied, "It's nothing." In his mind, our boy decided to wait for the right moment, knowing that they would appear when the time came.